Billionaire CEO meets his ex-wife and their 2 children at an art gallery opening and decides to rediscover love. But before we dive into the full story, let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. Now, subscribe to the channel and let's get started. The bright lights reflecting off elegant sculptures and modern canvases gave the grand opening of the Kensington Art Gallery an air of refined celebration. Men in tailored suits mingled with women dressed in eye-catching evening gowns. Soft classical music floated through the main hall, underscoring polite conversations. Amid this sophisticated scene, billionaire CEO Daniel Stone, impeccably dressed in a charcoal suit with a crisp pocket square, stepped into the gallery, exuding the cool confidence of a man accustomed to power and luxury. From the moment he entered, Daniel attracted discreet glances. His reputation as a tech mogul and visionary inventor preceded him. Whispers moved through the crowd. Here was the man who built Stone Innovations from a simple software startup into a global empire. Reporters, though politely stationed near the gallery entrance, hurried to snap photos of him shaking hands with other high-profile guests. Daniel's polite half-smile never wavered. To everyone else, he looked as composed as the polished marble floors beneath his feet. But inside Daniel's mind, conflicting emotions battled for space. This night wasn't merely a social obligation or a corporate sponsorship event. He had come because the gallery's curator was an old friend who insisted that Daniel's presence would bring prestige. Beneath that, there was a deeper, unspoken purpose he didn't dare admit to himself. Although he pretended his focus was on potential art acquisitions for his new corporate headquarters, Daniel was really scanning the crowd as if searching for something or someone he wasn't sure he wanted to find. When he approached the sleek bar installed in one corner of the main gallery, he took a glass of sparkling water instead of his usual scotch. In that moment, as he surveyed the glimmering scene, his gaze landed on a striking figure across the room. The woman had her back turned, dressed in a long midnight blue gown that showcased her poised silhouette. Her hair, pinned in a simple updo, revealed the graceful line of her neck. A sudden flare of recognition stole Daniel's breath. The shape of that neck, the posture of those shoulders. No, it couldn't be. He tried telling himself it was a trick of the light or a distant memory conjuring illusions. Before he could decide whether to step closer or retreat, the woman turned around. Their eyes met, and time momentarily froze. Cassandra, his ex-wife, the woman he had walked away from almost 8 years ago, back when Stone Innovations was just starting to conquer the industry. The immediate rush of emotion momentarily disarmed him. Regret, longing, and guilt swirled together, threatening the stoic front he'd worn for so many years. He almost didn't recognize her. Gone was the timid, uncertain look that often accompanied Cassandra during their tumultuous final months together. Instead, her eyes, cool and composed, regarded him with reserved politeness. There was warmth there, yes, but also an echo of pain. Before Daniel could muster a single word, he noticed 2 young figures at her side, a boy and a girl, no more than 6 or 7, each holding Cassandra's hand. Their bright eyes, so eerily reminiscent of Daniel's own, sent a jolt through his chest. In that instant, the gallery and all its elegance disappeared from Daniel's awareness. His mind flooded with memories, the short yet intense marriage, the arguments driven by his obsessive ambition, the day he walked out determined to build an empire, and the final conversation when everything fell apart. He had never known Cassandra was pregnant when he left, or rather, he learned it too late, after the divorce papers were signed and sent. The regret that he had long buried beneath corporate conquests now roared to life with brutal clarity. Cassandra, too, seemed momentarily lost in emotion. She had resolved herself to attending this event, fully aware that Daniel might appear because Stone Innovations was listed as a sponsor. Yet seeing him now up close struck her like a lightning bolt. She had dreaded this moment for years, her mind always conjuring unpleasant fantasies of how it would feel to encounter him again. Would he be cold? Indifferent? Or would there be a spark of acknowledgement for what they once shared? However, before she could formulate any greeting, her two children, twins named Dahlia and Liam, stepped forward. They looked up at Daniel with curiosity shining in their eyes, oblivious to the emotional weight between the adults. Dahlia clutched a small notebook filled with sketches. Her delicate features lit up with an almost wondrous awe. Perhaps she sensed that the man before her wasn't just a random stranger. Liam peered at Daniel with the boldness typical of an inquisitive child. "Hi," the boy said simply, glancing from Daniel's face to his mother's. For a man known for his charismatic boardroom presence, Daniel found himself tongue-tied. He crouched slightly to meet Liam's gaze. "Hi there," he managed, his voice unsteady. "And who might you be?" He wasn't sure if that was the right thing to ask. Anxiety flitted through his thoughts. Did Cassandra ever tell them about me? Should I act as though they're my children? Or do I pretend we're just strangers? Cassandra's cheeks colored faintly. "This is Liam," she said, carefully emphasizing each word. "And this is Dahlia. They're my children." Daniel couldn't tell if she deliberately avoided using the word "our." Possibly she was protecting them from further confusion. "Kids," Cassandra continued in a gentle tone, "this is Daniel, an old friend." No one seemed to believe the word "friend," but the children politely nodded. Dahlia, mustering courage, held out her notebook. "I drew this picture," she said. "The man in the drawing is wearing a nice suit, like yours." She looked at Daniel expectantly, hoping for approval. Daniel's heart lurched when he saw the scribbled lines that clearly resembled a tall figure with short black hair and a serious expression, standing amidst tall buildings. The features were simplistic, but the resemblance was uncanny. Suddenly, a swirl of laughter from another guest reminded them they were in the middle of a bustling art gallery. Cassandra, uncomfortable with the stares from onlookers who recognized Daniel Stone in conversation with a mysterious woman and two children, cleared her throat. "Maybe we should find a quieter place to talk." Daniel agreed instantly. He led them away from the main exhibit, weaving through sculptures and paintings as other guests parted to let them pass. Eyes followed them, some curious, some envious, and a few from the press taking silent mental notes. A hush fell over the group as they arrived in a smaller annex of the gallery lined with impressionist paintings. Here, the murmurs of the crowd were distant, almost like a dream. Clearing his throat, Daniel finally addressed the questions that hammered inside his head. "Cassandra," he began, forcing himself to speak gently, "I didn't know about them." He glanced at Dahlia, still clinging to her notebook, and Liam, who was attempting to stand in a poised manner, as if copying his father's confident stance. Guilt gnawed at Daniel's heart. "Why didn't you? I would have—" Cassandra raised a hand, a silent plea for him to stop. "I tried," she said, her voice trembling faintly with the memory. "But you were on the brink of launching Stone Innovations internationally, and your lawyers, well, everything was so messy. The day I discovered the pregnancy, you'd already filed for separation. The lawyers said you were too busy. I felt humiliated trying to chase after you." She took a shaky breath, determined not to cry. "By the time I realized I should have pushed harder, it felt too late. I decided to raise them on my own." At that, Daniel's composure almost shattered. He wanted to say 100 things, that he would have left everything to be by her side if he had truly known, that he was sorry, that he wasn't the same reckless man consumed by ambition. But he could only manage, "You shouldn't have had to do that alone." Dahlia and Liam peered up, sensing the tension but not fully grasping its origin. Dahlia tugged lightly on her mother's dress. "Mommy, can we go see the colorful paintings again? The big one with the swirling shapes?" Cassandra nodded, offering a reassuring smile to her daughter. "Go ahead, sweetie. Stay right where I can see you. I'll be right here." The twins trotted off, drawn by the vibrant artwork in the corridor, leaving the two adults in a hush that crackled with unresolved emotions. A rush of memories hit Daniel. Nights spent coding with Cassandra dozing on the couch beside him, the messy arguments about finances when Stone Innovations demanded constant investments, and the phone call that ended it all. Had those memories led him to this moment, a father who didn't even know his own children? "I'm sorry," he whispered, stepping closer. "I truly am." Cassandra pressed her lips together. "They're not just children, Daniel. They're your children. They deserve better than an apology delivered out of guilt at a gallery opening." There was no venom in her voice, only a quiet heartbreak. Before Daniel could respond, a new wave of guests meandered into the annex, forcing them to break their locked gazes. Cassandra pulled herself together, inhaling deeply, as though reassembling the poised woman she'd become. "I'm here tonight because a friend invited me," she said, adjusting a stray curl behind her ear. "This is the first exhibit I've attended in a long time, and it's not for a party or to mingle with socialites. It's for my art, a piece I contributed." Daniel's eyes flashed with interest. "You're a featured artist?" Her chin lifted slightly. "Not featured, exactly, but one of my sculptures was chosen for display. I carve wood sculptures, small-scale pieces mostly. I never told you because I started after we parted." An abrupt wave of admiration and sorrow filled Daniel. He remembered Cassandra's love for sketching as a hobby, a trait he once regarded as a mild pastime, overshadowed by his own corporate fixations. "I'd love to see it," he offered gently, seeking a connection. Cassandra hesitated, uncertain. The tension between them still hovered like unspoken thunderclouds. Yet a faint nod from her signaled a cautious willingness to open a door that had been closed for far too long. Leading him across the gallery, Cassandra stopped at a modest wooden sculpture displayed on a side pedestal. It depicted two adult figures enveloping two smaller ones, an abstract portrayal of family. Though the forms were carved with swirling lines and no distinct faces, the emotion was unmistakable: care, love, and protection. A tiny plaque read simply, "Reunion by C. Stone." Daniel's breath caught. She still carried his surname when signing her art. "Reunion," he murmured, voice thick with emotion. "Cassandra, She shook her head, urging him to be silent. "Don't say it if you don't mean it. This piece represents hope that broken things can sometimes be mended, but only if those involved truly want it." Her gaze darted to their children, who were now admiring a painting with vivid turquoise brushstrokes. They deserved to know their father. In that moment, the hush around them seemed tangible. The swirl of wealthy patrons and flamboyant critics, the grandeur of high art, and the ambient music all faded. Daniel Stone stood at a crossroads, the past he abandoned, and a present that beckoned him to choose love over power. Slowly, he reached for Cassandra's hand, uncertain whether she'd pull away. She let his fingers brush hers, a ghost of contact. "Let me prove," he whispered, "that I can be the father they deserve, and the man you once believed in." Cassandra's sculpture stood under the gallery spotlight, its polished wood reflecting a soft glow. Visitors occasionally paused to admire it, but none grasped its personal significance better than Daniel Stone. As he stood beside her, he felt a curious blend of shame, hope, and humility. The piece was titled "Reunion," and the message was unmistakable. He thought of all the times he had dismissed her artistic impulses as a hobby without a future. Now, that hobby had transformed into something beautiful and profound, something that spoke to the deepest corners of his own regret. Outside the exhibit room, Dahlia and Liam were still exploring. Their hushed giggles drifted into the sculpture hall, beckoning him. Those children, his children, possessed smiles and eyes that mirrored bits of him and Cassandra in equal measure. Every so often, Cassandra angled her head to make sure she hadn't lost sight of them. She seemed to fight a constant internal tug-of-war, protectiveness versus the urge to trust Daniel again. "Cassandra," Daniel said softly, "what if we talk somewhere quieter? Maybe dinner tonight? Or coffee? Anything so we can speak without a crowd watching." Her eyes darted toward the twins. "They have school in the morning," she replied almost defensively. The line felt protective, a shield for her routine and the life she'd forged without him. Yet she hesitated for just an instant. "But we could do coffee. There's a cafe not far from here. After the event is over, we can talk while the kids eat something light." "That would be great. I'd like that." He exhaled with relief, careful not to sound too eager, though every nerve inside him thrummed with anticipation. A faint nod closed their exchange. They parted ways briefly, Cassandra wanting to check on a friend who was also displaying artwork, Daniel drifting into conversations with well-wishers who recognized him. Reporters circled gently, attempting to glean some comment. Daniel offered only standard lines about supporting the arts and praising the local talent. Still, his gaze kept sliding back to Cassandra or to the twins, worried they might vanish if he looked away for too long. At one point, Liam, noticing Daniel's glances, walked over with purposeful steps. The boy clutched the small figurine he'd received from one of the kid-friendly corners of the gallery. "They gave this to me, but I'm not sure what it's supposed to be. A dinosaur, maybe." He held up a wooden shape, eyes flicking between the sculpture and Daniel. The child was studying him, trying to connect puzzle pieces of identity that no one had fully explained. Daniel crouched to the boy's level, heart pounding. He gently turned the figurine in his hands. "It looks a bit like a stegosaurus. The ridges on the back, see?" Liam's expression brightened with a small flash of wonder. "Cool," the boy whispered. Then came the shy question, "Did you like my sister's drawing?" "Yes," Daniel managed, voice tight with emotion. "I loved it. Dahlia is very talented, and I'm sure you are too." The boy pursed his lips in a miniature version of the serious expression Daniel saw in the mirror every morning. "I like building things. Mom says I have a good eye for shapes." He blinked, still confused at why this man, this stranger who felt strangely familiar, showed such keen interest. "Maybe you got that from me," Daniel said softly, and realized, too late, how complicated those words were. Liam's eyes flashed with uncertainty, like he heard something significant but couldn't grasp it entirely. Quickly, Cassandra called out from across the room, noticing the intensity on Liam's face. The boy scampered back to her side. Before Daniel could dwell on that moment, a business acquaintance clapped him on the shoulder, pulling him into forced small talk about upcoming tech conferences. Daniel responded politely, but his mind was elsewhere. An hour later, the gallery's crowd began to thin. The curator stepped forward for a short speech, thanking everyone, especially the featured artists. When Cassandra's name was mentioned, Daniel clapped more vigorously than anyone else. She accepted the polite applause with a grateful, albeit reserved, smile. For Daniel, that fleeting moment felt surreal. He was applauding not as a sponsor or wealthy donor, but as someone genuinely proud of Cassandra's achievement. Eventually, the lights in the gallery softened, signaling the end of the evening. Patrons drifted toward the exit, and caterers began tidying up. Cassandra gathered Dahlia and Liam, reminding them to thank the event staff who'd been so kind. The children responded with well-rehearsed politeness that tugged at Daniel's heart. He had missed watching them grow into such thoughtful individuals. "Ready?" Daniel asked, approaching Cassandra. She lingered for a moment in front of her sculpture, lightly tracing its contours with her fingertips, as though saying a private goodbye. "Ready," she replied, but her tone sounded uncertain. She was about to step outside with Daniel Stone, the ex-husband who left her 8 years ago, accompanied by 2 children who bore his name, whether or not it was formally recognized. Even so, she lifted her chin. The only way out of this was through. They emerged onto the lamplit street. The crisp night air, tinged with the scent of a nearby bakery, greeted them. Dahlia and Liam walked ahead, marveling at the city lights. Daniel offered to call his driver to bring around his sleek black sedan, but Cassandra politely declined. "The cafe is just a couple of blocks away. The kids like walking when it's not too cold." He took that in stride and fell into step beside her. Pedestrians recognized him, some offering nods or stares, but Daniel no longer cared about that typical wave of attention. His entire focus rested on the subtle closeness to Cassandra and the small steps of the children. If passers-by were to guess, they might see a family enjoying an evening stroll, a facade Daniel yearned to make real. They reached a quaint corner cafe with warm golden lights. Through the glass, they saw a row of pastries on display and a handful of customers reading or chatting at cozy tables. Cassandra led the way, selecting a corner booth by the window. Dahlia and Liam immediately pressed their noses to the pastry case, debating which treat looked most delicious. As they settled, Daniel slid into the seat across from Cassandra. The children perched beside her, forming a protective line between their mother and the man they'd just met. Daniel noticed their body language, a subtle barrier that told him trust was far from guaranteed. He inhaled slowly, reminding himself that building a relationship would require more than a single evening. A friendly waitress stopped by and Cassandra ordered 2 small hot chocolates for the kids, plus a chamomile tea for herself. Daniel requested coffee, black. The waitress recognized Daniel from magazine covers and, flustered, nearly dropped her notepad. He flashed a reassuring smile, hoping to convey that he was no one special in this moment, just a man wanting to reconnect with his children. When the drinks arrived, the tension in the booth was palpable. Liam and Dahlia sipped their hot chocolates, sneaking curious glances at Daniel. Their mother stared into her teacup as though searching for the right words. Finally, Daniel cleared his throat. "I know this must feel strange," he began, choosing each word carefully. "But I want to do what's right." Cassandra cradled her mug with both hands. "It's more than strange. It's complicated. The kids, they've seen pictures of you from magazines or online. They've asked questions, but I never knew how to answer without making them resent you or idolize you." Her honesty stung, but Daniel respected it. "I understand. I don't expect them to call me Dad overnight. He glanced at Liam, who was methodically picking whipped cream off his hot chocolate. "I just want a chance to know them, and to support you. Both of you. All of you." From across the table, Dahlia tilted her head, the spark of curiosity in her eyes almost overshadowing her nervousness. "Mom said you travel a lot," she ventured. "Do you like airplanes?" The question was innocent, but the subtext was heavy. She knew only the Daniel Stone from rumors or second-hand accounts, the father who was perpetually absent. Daniel swallowed hard. "I do travel, yes, mostly for business. But maybe from now on I can try traveling less and staying in town more. Maybe I could show you my office one day if that's okay with your mom." Dahlia's eyes lit up. "The big tower with all the glass windows?" "Yes," Daniel answered, a gentle smile forming. "That's the one. It has some fun areas we designed for employees' families, like game rooms and a rooftop garden." He paused, glancing at Cassandra for permission. She hesitated, then gave a slight nod. "We'll see," Cassandra added gently, looking at her daughter. "We can talk about it later." Meanwhile, Liam's gaze fixed on Daniel's watch, a sleek, futuristic model that displayed subtle digital readouts. "Is that a Stone Innovations watch?" he asked, with the bluntness only a child could manage. When Daniel confirmed it, Liam's interest deepened. "They say it can check your heart rate and even connect to drones." Daniel chuckled. "It can do a lot of things. But maybe after dinner I can show you a few tricks." He suddenly realized that the best way to bond with a curious child might be through the technology he'd built his life around. Strange how once he believed that same obsession had cost him everything, yet it might become a bridge to reconnect with them. Cassandra watched silently, her heart conflicting with every passing minute. Part of her softened, seeing Daniel answering their children's questions with sincerity, not a hint of impatience. Another part remained guarded. She remembered how easily he could be swept away by his career, how quickly he had brushed her aside in the past. Reconciliation sounded like a nice word, but trust was more than a word. It was built by actions, day after day. They finished their drinks, and Daniel insisted on paying the bill. Despite Cassandra's mild protest, she had grown used to covering her and the kids' expenses. He handed his credit card to the waitress, who was still starstruck. Soon, they were standing on the sidewalk outside the cafe again, the city quieter as night wore on. "I should get them home," Cassandra said, eyes drifting to the twins who were yawning. "It's been a big day." Daniel glanced around, half wishing to prolong the evening. "Let me arrange a car for you?" Cassandra looked at the kids, then sighed. "All right. We'll accept a ride. Just don't think it means—" She stopped herself. It was unnecessary to say. He likely already understood. Don't mistake a simple courtesy for the end of all their problems. Daniel tapped his phone, summoning his driver. A sleek sedan soon glided to the curb, and the driver, a middle-aged man in a crisp black suit, opened the doors. The twins clambered into the back seat with Cassandra, while Daniel slipped into the passenger side. The interior was luxurious, though Cassandra noted it was also somewhat impersonal, like a hotel elevator. Plush but built for fleeting moments, not everyday life. As they pulled away from the cafe, Daniel turned halfway in his seat to face Cassandra and the kids. "Could I have your phone number?" he asked, quiet and direct. I realize we both have lawyers and all that, but I'd like to be able to talk to you, to them, without any extra walls." Cassandra studied him, her emotions swirling. Then she took a small notepad from her purse, scribbled her number, and passed it to him. The moment felt symbolic. Such a simple exchange, yet it carried the weight of reopening a door that had once been locked tightly. They rode the rest of the way mostly in silence, Dahlia and Liam gazing out at the glittering city lights, Cassandra lost in memories, and Daniel mentally sorting out what steps would follow. After nearly 15 minutes, the driver eased to a stop in front of Cassandra's modest apartment building in a quieter district. Her home was not lavish, but it was warm, well kept, a testament to how she had persevered. Under the orange glow of the street lamp, Cassandra unbuckled the twins and guided them onto the sidewalk. Daniel stepped out too, uncertain if he should walk them to the door. He lingered, torn between respect for Cassandra's boundaries and an urge to show care. She gave him a gentle nod. "You can walk with us if you want," she said, voice guarded but not cold. He followed them up a short flight of stairs. Dahlia was halfway up when she turned around to wave at Daniel. Liam hovered close to his mother. At the apartment door, Cassandra balanced keys and grocery bags from the gallery's gift shop. Daniel offered to help, and she allowed it, if only to keep from fumbling. For a moment they stood outside the door, the children behind Cassandra's legs. The hum of city traffic sounded in the distance. Daniel searched Cassandra's face, seeking any trace of how she truly felt. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for letting me be a part of this evening." Cassandra's hand tightened on the doorknob. "It's a start," she acknowledged, then opened the door. "Good night, Daniel." They slipped into the apartment. Daniel heard the lock click gently. He turned, walking back down the stairs alone, his mind whirling with a dozen plans and regrets. The driver waited patiently at the curb. Exhaling deeply, Daniel slid into the back seat this time, letting the hush of the car interior surround him. He glanced down at Cassandra's phone number in his hand, the scrawled digits a symbol of both second chances and the Herculean effort it would take to mend what he'd broken. Outside, the city lights blurred by, but Daniel saw only the images of two bright-eyed children who had changed his life in an instant, and the woman he never truly stopped loving. Daniel Stone watched the city glide by through the tinted window of his hired sedan. Neon lights from passing storefronts streaked across the glass, casting shifting colors along his face. He carried Cassandra's phone number in his pocket, but a far heavier burden in his heart. It felt surreal. A single evening had changed everything. Only hours ago, he was a billionaire entrepreneur mingling with gallery patrons, unperturbed by life outside his corporate sphere. Now he was a father desperate to find a way back into the family he had abandoned. When the car finally pulled in front of his penthouse, Daniel sighed at the imposing architecture that had once symbolized success. The building's modern facade gleamed under moonlight, and a uniformed doorman rushed to open the car door. Daniel murmured thanks, stepping into a lobby draped in polished marble and understated opulence. Yet none of that luxury comforted him. The elevator ride was solitary. As he ascended, Daniel's thoughts whirred. Dahlia's shy smile, Liam's inquisitive gaze, and Cassandra's mixture of warmth and caution. He wondered how many birthdays he'd missed, how many bedtime stories or scraped knees. All that time he had convinced himself that chasing ambition was justified, but now the cost felt immeasurable. When the elevator doors slid open into his penthouse, more like a personal museum of modern furniture and abstract art, he paused to absorb the silence. Not long ago he found refuge in that hush, seeing it as a testament to his success. No noise, no clutter, no distractions. Tonight, it struck him as lonely. Setting down his phone, Daniel stared out the floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the city skyline. His reflection confronted him, impeccably groomed, undeniably wealthy, yet uncertain. He loosened his tie, sank into a leather armchair, and allowed himself a rare moment of vulnerability. That's when the memories returned. Snapshots of Cassandra's laughter in their cramped first apartment, the fleeting days when her presence alone made him feel grounded. In those days, there was no empire, only potential, and her unwavering belief in him. He recalled her expression when they parted ways, heartbreak masked by calm acceptance. She said, "If you walk out now, don't come back just to say sorry." Those words had haunted him occasionally, rare moments of regret that he crushed beneath new projects and expansions. Yet, ironically, the empire he built now served as a stark reminder of what he lacked. In bed, Daniel tossed restlessly, images of Dahlia and Liam drifting through his mind like restless ghosts. He had always told himself he left because their marriage was stifling his growth, that Cassandra wouldn't understand the pressures of a startup on the brink of global success. But tonight, he felt the hollowness of those justifications. No matter how the board applauded him or how many countries' stone innovations conquered, he couldn't rewrite the past. Morning arrived with pale sunlight creeping through the penthouse windows. Daniel rose early, sliding into a perfectly tailored suit. Today wasn't just another day for meetings or product launches. He had a personal mission: to show Cassandra, through actions, not just words, that he was earnest about reconnecting. And though he had no idea how she might respond, doing nothing was not an option. He stared at his phone, the numbers she'd scribbled on a slip of paper now programmed into his contacts. Fear of rejection clawed at his confidence. When had he last been afraid to make a simple call? Usually he negotiated with investors, sparred with corporate sharks, and ventured into new markets without batting an eyelash. But this felt different, more personal. Finally, he inhaled and tapped her number. It rang twice before Cassandra's gentle yet guarded voice answered, "Hello?" A sudden dryness gripped Daniel's throat. "Cassandra, hi, it's Daniel." He wondered if she recognized the number or if her heart skipped a beat the way his did. Clearing his throat, he pressed on, I hope I'm not calling too early." A pause. "It's fine," she said. He detected a slight tremor in her tone. "I was getting the kids ready for school." "Right, of course." His voice grew softer. "I was thinking, if it's okay with you, maybe I could pick them up after school? Take them somewhere fun? A museum? Or the park?" He held his breath, anticipating a refusal. Cassandra hesitated so long that Daniel wondered if the call had dropped. Eventually, she spoke. "I appreciate the offer, but Dahlia and Liam have after-school activities most days. Their schedule is pretty set. I don't want to disrupt them too much." He swallowed his disappointment. I understand, he said, struggling to maintain composure. If you let me know their schedule, I could plan around it. We could do something on the weekend. Another small pause. We'll see, she replied. But then, as if softening slightly, she added, It's not that I don't want them to see you. I just have to be sure it's consistent. If you show up once and then disappear again, it'll hurt them. A pang of guilt shot through him. She was only speaking the truth. I get it. I'm not here to vanish again. Let me prove that to you. Maybe we can meet later this week, the 3 of us, or the 4 of us, however you'd prefer. Her voice relaxed a fraction. Let me think about it, and I'll call you back tonight, okay? Sure. Thanks for at least considering it. Click. The line disconnected. Daniel exhaled, half relieved that Cassandra hadn't outright refused, half anxious about what her final decision might be. He slipped his phone into his pocket and headed to his corporate headquarters, determined to handle company matters quickly so he could keep his schedule flexible. Meanwhile, across town, Cassandra walked her children to school. The air felt crisp, laced with the promise of early autumn. Liam fiddled with the straps of his backpack, recounting his memory of the cool watch Daniel wore the previous night. Dahlia lingered near Cassandra, eyes shining as she talked about the tall glass building Daniel might show them one day. Their excitement both warmed and worried Cassandra. As they reached the school entrance, a place bustling with children's chatter and vibrant backpacks, Cassandra bent down to give each twin a gentle hug. She forced a confident tone. Listen, I don't know exactly what will happen with him, but trust me, I'll never let anything hurt you. The kids nodded, though Dahlia ventured, He seems nice, Mom. I think he's sorry. Maybe, Cassandra allowed, softly stroking Dahlia's hair. Then the bell rang, and the children scurried off to join their classmates. Cassandra lingered a moment, watching them vanish into the swirl of childhood chaos. She felt an unsettling mixture of hope and caution swirl in her chest. The memory of Daniel's earnest eyes last night gnawed at her skepticism. For a moment she hated how easily he could stir up old emotions. Hadn't she spent years getting over him? She had built a life for herself, small but independent. She juggled part-time work designing crafts and teaching a local art class. Though finances were often tight, it was a life free from the emotional tumult of Daniel's ambition. Yet now, all the reasons she'd locked him out were warring against the faint flicker of possibility that maybe, just maybe, people could change. By midday, Cassandra found herself at a local art studio, where she gave lessons to a small group of retirees who found solace in painting. She guided them through brush techniques, praising the subtle blending on a watercolor piece. If her students noticed the distant cast to her eyes, they didn't comment. They simply thanked her for her patience, calling her Miss Cassandra with genuine affection. During a break, her friend and colleague Marnie approached. A plump woman with a cheerful demeanor, Marnie had known Cassandra long enough to sense her mood. "You're distracted," she observed. "Something on your mind?" Cassandra smiled ruefully, dabbing paint off her hands. "It's complicated," she replied, realizing that phrase was turning into her default. "Daniel's back." Marnie raised an eyebrow. "Daniel Stone, your ex-husband? The famous CEO? My gosh, Cass, that's not complicated, that's downright explosive. Tell me more." Keeping her voice low to avoid the other students, Cassandra briefly explained the gallery encounter, how Daniel met the twins and offered to step back into their lives. Marnie listened with an expression of empathetic shock. "Are you okay?" Marnie asked gently, resting a hand on Cassandra's shoulder. Cassandra shrugged, feeling the weight of it all. "I spent so long resenting him, but also missing him. Now he shows up wanting to make amends. I don't know if I can trust him. And the kids, they're already curious, excited even. I'm terrified of them getting hurt." Marnie pursed her lips. "People can change, Cass. especially when they face their mistakes. Maybe Daniel's sincerity is real. She paused. But you have every right to protect your children. And yourself. Don't rush into anything. I'm not rushing, Cassandra assured her, though inside she acknowledged a subtle longing for closure, for a chance to breathe easier. I'm just letting him contact me, that's all, and deciding step by step. Marnie nodded in support before the two parted to resume class. As Cassandra adjusted a canvas on an easel, guiding an elderly woman's hand to steady her brush, her own mind drifted. Could she allow Daniel a second chance without losing the independence she had fought so hard to earn? Early evening found Cassandra back home, sifting through the day's mail while Dahlia and Liam finished a quick snack in the kitchen. The kids chattered about their school day, occasionally referencing Daniel with bright eyes. Cassandra's phone buzzed, a call from an unknown number. She hesitated, then answered. It was Daniel. "Hi, Cassandra," he began, a mix of nerves and courtesy threading his voice. "I'm just following up to see if you decided anything about this weekend. If not, I get it, but I'm eager to see them again." She moved to the living room, mindful of the kids eavesdropping. Actually, they have a half-day Saturday. Dahlia's dance rehearsal ended early, and Liam's building workshop was cancelled, so we're free in the afternoon. Daniel's relief was almost palpable through the phone. "That's great. Maybe I can pick you up or we can meet somewhere. What do they enjoy?" Cassandra ran a hand through her hair. "There's a children's science museum near the river. They have interactive exhibits. Usually the kids love that kind of thing." "Perfect. Let me handle tickets. Anything else they need?" Daniel offered, excitement edging into his voice. She softened slightly. "All right. Let's plan on that. Around 1 o'clock? A pause. "Yes. Thank you. I promise I'll be there." They ended the call, and Cassandra found herself holding the phone gently, heart pounding. Beyond the walls, the city lights began twinkling. She swallowed hard, then returned to the kitchen, where the twins peeked at her with curiosity in their eyes. "Mom, was that him?" asked Liam, brimming with a cautious kind of hope. "Yes," Cassandra answered quietly, offering the children a small smile. "He wants to take us to the Science Museum on Saturday." Dahlia's face lit up. "Really? That's awesome!" Liam, too, nodded, trying to hide his grin behind a half-eaten cookie. Seeing their excitement sparked equal parts joy and fear in Cassandra. Saturday was just days away, and the looming question weighed on her. Would this be the start of something healing, or the revival of old wounds? She forced herself to push that doubt aside, for the kids' sake, and maybe her own. Something in Daniel's voice convinced her it was worth a try. Saturday morning arrived with a subtle rustle of excitement in Cassandra's apartment. Liam and Dahlia woke early, the promise of an afternoon at the Science Museum giving them little patience for morning chores. While Cassandra bustled around the kitchen, preparing a simple breakfast of toast and eggs, her children peppered her with questions about Daniel. Would he pick them up in a fancy car? Did he really build all those inventions at his company? Was he sure to keep his promises this time? Listening quietly, Cassandra felt a pang of uncertainty. She forced a warm tone when addressing their enthusiasm. "He said he'll meet us right outside the museum at 1 o'clock, she reminded them gently. "So let's not jump to conclusions, okay? We'll have fun with or without him, right?" The twins glanced at each other with a flicker of confusion. For children, the distinction between unconditional acceptance and cautious optimism was blurry. Still, Dahlia gave a determined nod. "He'll come," she said, as though daring the universe to contradict her. Liam shrugged but showed no signs of doubt either. Once breakfast was done, Cassandra helped them gather the items they might need: comfortable shoes, water bottles, a small snack in case the museum cafe was crowded. She tried to stay busy, if only to distract herself from a growing knot of nerves in her stomach. Making a final pass in the mirror, she checked her reflection, wearing a casual but neat outfit, suitable for an outing with the kids. The slightest wave of her hair framed her face, and she couldn't help a subtle flush in her cheeks, remembering how many times Daniel had admired that same hair years ago. Daniel's morning began in an entirely different setting, the top-floor suite of Stone Innovations' downtown tower. There, behind a glass desk in an ultra-modern office, he spent hours finishing urgent work. Contracts needed his signature, and an upcoming investor pitch demanded his final notes. Under normal circumstances, Daniel would devote the entire day to these tasks, but not today. Precisely at noon, he closed his laptop and informed his assistant to hold all calls. The rest of the day was sacred. He had a date with his family. He left the office to find his personal driver waiting in the lobby. Even as he slid into the back seat of a sleek black sedan, Daniel felt a peculiar mixture of eagerness and trepidation. The last time he'd taken a day off for something personal, truly personal, he couldn't even recall. His schedule had always been a fortress, yet now that fortress had cracks. Dahlia, Liam, and Cassandra were on the other side. The ride to the museum felt both too short and too long. He watched the city blur past with restless energy. He mentally rehearsed how he'd greet them, a friendly wave, a smile, something that wouldn't seem too stiff. Daniel wanted to be the version of himself that people rarely saw, kind, warm, capable of laughter instead of just efficiency. He wasn't sure if he remembered how, but he was determined to try. Cassandra and the kids arrived at the Science Museum half an hour early. It was a large, modern building constructed with sweeping steel beams and vast glass walls overlooking a shimmering river that wound through the city. Families milled around outside, chattering in excited voices. Liam pointed out a giant sculpture of a rocket near the entrance, practically bouncing in place to go see it. But Cassandra guided them toward a bench near the entrance, wanting to be visible if Daniel appeared. "We'll wait here a bit," she said gently. Dahlia clasped Cassandra's hand, eyes scanning the crowds for a recognizable face. Minutes ticked by in the bright midday sun. Each time someone who remotely resembled Daniel walked by, Dahlia and Liam sat up straighter. Then, at exactly 10 minutes to 1, a tall figure emerged from the crowd. Daniel Stone, wearing casual chinos, a simple collared shirt, and an almost shy grin. Despite the unassuming outfit, he still radiated the confident air of a successful man, yet something softer flickered in his eyes. He scanned the area until he spotted them. Slowly, carefully, he lifted a hand in greeting. Dahlia's face lit up, and Liam shot to his feet. Cassandra's chest tightened at the relief flooding her children's expressions. So he'd kept his word, so far. He approached with measured steps. "Hi," he said, voice quiet yet warm. "Hope I'm not late." Dahlia giggled, shaking her head. "No, we just got here." Liam, less exuberant but equally pleased, nodded at Daniel in greeting. Meanwhile, Cassandra rose and offered a cordial smile, acknowledging that he'd arrived right on time. Daniel exhaled faintly, as though he'd been holding his breath. "Shall we head inside?" Cassandra asked, gesturing toward the glass doors. The kids needed no further invitation. They dashed forward eagerly. Daniel and Cassandra followed side by side, a slight tension in the air, though not unpleasant. Inside the museum, bursts of color and kinetic energy greeted them. Whirring gadgets, interactive screens, and children's laughter echoing off the high ceilings. Exhibits featured everything from robotics to astronomy, laid out in multiple wings. Liam gravitated immediately toward a robotics showcase, fascinated by mechanical arms building miniature toys. Dahlia drifted toward a station where she could manipulate lights and mirrors, creating dancing reflections on a large wall. Daniel stood between them, his heart swelling with a new emotion. "My company helped sponsor some of these exhibits," he murmured to Cassandra, "but I've never actually seen them in action like this, with kids genuinely enjoying it." She glanced at him, arms folded casually. "There's a difference between reading about budgets on a spreadsheet and watching your own children be inspired, isn't there?" A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Yes," he agreed softly. his gaze returning to Liam, who was eagerly pressing buttons at the robotics station. It's humbling. They spent the next hour exploring. Daniel stayed close to Liam, fielding questions about how microchips worked or how a sensor recognized hand movements. Dahlia flitted between them, sometimes taking Cassandra's hand, other times tugging Daniel's sleeve to show him a neat optical illusion. The children's excitement became the unspoken glue binding the family moment together, at least temporarily. Around mid-afternoon, they paused for a break at the museum cafe. Cassandra found a table while Daniel bought refreshments, juice for the kids, coffee for himself, and iced tea for Cassandra. As they settled, Liam was demonstrating a miniature robot he'd just assembled from a kit in the gift shop. With pride, he showed Daniel how it could crawl across the table on tiny legs. Daniel watched in fascination. "This is impressive," he praised Liam. "You have a real knack for building." Liam's eyes sparkled. "Thanks. It's not that hard, though." He gave a self-conscious grin. "I just followed the instructions." "Still," Daniel continued, "it means you can understand directions and put everything in the right place. That's exactly how engineers start." A small flicker of pride shone on Liam's face. He glanced at Cassandra, seeking her reaction, and she nodded encouragingly. Even Dahlia, who wasn't usually into robots, looked intrigued. In that moment, Daniel felt a warm pride, not just in Liam's abilities, but in the sheer fact that he was there to witness it. As they sipped their drinks, Cassandra allowed herself to relax a fraction. Yes, Daniel was still the man who had walked away, but she couldn't deny he was making an effort, listening to the children, teaching them small bits of knowledge, showing genuine delight at their every discovery. Every so often he cast her a grateful look, as if to say, "Thank you for letting me be here." Once their drinks were done, Dahlia spotted an upstairs space exploration area and insisted they visit it. The group headed there, strolling past a spiral staircase that led to a darkened room filled with glowing starscapes and planets suspended from the ceiling. Animated screens showed rocket launches and lunar landings. Near a large projector display, Dahlia paused to read the text about constellations. She turned to Daniel. "Mom says you used to like stargazing. Is that true?" A flicker of nostalgia crossed his eyes. "I did once," he said, glancing at Cassandra out of the corner of his eye. "When I was a kid, my father took me to see a meteor shower. We camped out in the backyard." His voice trailed off, remembering how that moment sparked his interest in science and technology, how the vast possibilities of the universe fed his drive to innovate. But then came the memory of how, in pursuit of that same ambition, he'd sacrificed everything else. Cassandra overheard. She remembered bits of that story. Daniel once told her about lying on a blanket in the grass, marveling at shooting stars. She also recalled how he never mentioned his father after he left for college, implying there was a distance. Perhaps Daniel had inherited the pattern of disconnect, or maybe he'd simply never learned how to stay. Dahlia's question was innocent, but it pressed at deeper truths. In the glowing half-light of the space exhibit, Daniel gently cleared his throat. "Maybe one night we could watch the stars together," he suggested, eyeing Cassandra. "If you're okay with it." Liam overheard and grinned. "I want to see a meteor shower, too. Do you think we'll catch one soon?" Daniel ruffled the boy's hair. "We can check the astronomy apps for the next one, or if there's an observatory event. I'll keep you posted, bud." For a moment, Dahlia and Liam exchanged excited glances. Cassandra, standing slightly apart, felt her heart clench. This was how it was supposed to be. Both parents guiding their kids, sharing moments, building dreams. It had been too long coming. A tide of conflicting emotions threatened to pull her under, but she remained composed, summoning a small nod of acknowledgement. By late afternoon, they had toured nearly every section of the museum, touching plasma globes, pedaling an energy generator bike, experimenting with illusions. The children's laughter and curiosity thrived, fueled by Daniel's attentive presence. This was no superficial cameo. He was fully engaged, kneeling beside them to read exhibit panels, praising them for their insights and offering gentle explanations. When they finally emerged from the museum, the sun was beginning its descent. Warm orange light spread across the sky as families trickled out, tired but happy. The twins chattered about their favorite parts. Dahlia loved the hologram exhibit, Liam the robotics lab. Cassandra walked with Daniel trailing next to her, feeling an odd sense of déjà vu for something that had never actually happened before. "Well," Daniel said, his voice tentative, "this day was incredible. Thank you for letting me join." The children looked at Cassandra expectantly, as though waiting for her verdict. She paused, carefully choosing her words. "The kids had a wonderful time. So did I." Her tone, while calm, was not without warmth. "Thank you for keeping your promise." Relief radiated across Daniel's expression. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small pamphlet. "I saw an advertisement for an upcoming kids' workshop, something about building small drones. Liam might love it. Dahlia, there's also an art-science crossover for illusions. Maybe you two want to go if your mom agrees?" Both children gushed excitement at the idea. Cassandra, uncertain, checked the dates. "This is in 2 weeks," she noted. Her eyes flicked to Daniel. "We'll see how scheduling works out, but it does look interesting." Daniel nodded. "I'm ready to help in any way," he assured, trying not to push too hard. As the moment of goodbye loomed, Dahlia and Liam spontaneously rushed to give Daniel quick hugs. Their childish spontaneity nearly broke him, and he lowered himself to return the affection gently, as if holding fragile treasures. Cassandra observed, tears pricking at the corners of her eyes, though she blinked them away. The children pulled back, flushed with excitement. "I'll see you soon, I hope," Daniel said to them softly, letting his gaze shift to Cassandra. She swallowed. "We'll be in touch," she managed, voice thick with the swirl of emotions she refused to show fully. "Good night, Daniel." He offered a hesitant wave, stepping backward before turning away. As he walked off, Cassandra watched, uncertain whether to feel joy or fear for letting him get this close to their lives again. The kids chattered at her side, reminiscing about the museum's wonders. Their happiness was real, and for that, Cassandra felt grateful. In the distance, Daniel climbed into a waiting car, glancing over his shoulder for one last glimpse of them. Catching Cassandra's eye, he gave a subtle nod. Gratitude, apology, and yearning all in one. She responded with the faintest smile, then turned to guide her children home, each step echoing with a question. Was this a beautiful step forward, or a delicate house of cards ready to topple at the first sign of strain? The next several days passed in a whirlwind of cautious optimism, frequent text messages, and tentative smiles. Daniel found himself texting Cassandra simple check-ins. "How are the kids?" or "Hope your art class went well." And she responded, briefly at first, then more openly as each day slipped by without him vanishing. A fragile sense of trust began to bud, though Cassandra guarded it carefully. For Dahlia and Liam, their father's presence had shifted from an abstract rumor to a living part of their reality. In the afternoons after school, they'd rush home and excitedly share random facts about Daniel, which apps he recommended, which inventions he'd boasted about in passing, or some piece of technology they saw on the news that belonged to Stone Innovations. Cassandra listened, balancing her own mixed feelings with the children's wide-eyed enthusiasm. Meanwhile, Daniel's routine at Stone Innovations changed in subtle but significant ways. Where he once spent endless evenings at the office, he now made a point to leave earlier. No longer did he remain in marathon meetings or linger in the lab late into the night. His employees noticed, some whispering that the boss must have a new focus. Others guessed he was tired of his workaholic lifestyle. Daniel didn't bother correcting them. He knew exactly what drew him away from his old patterns, and it wasn't fatigue, it was rediscovered fatherhood. On a Wednesday evening, as Daniel paced inside his minimalist penthouse, he made a call that took more courage than any business negotiation. "Cassandra, hi," he began, wrestling his nerves into place. "I'm thinking of inviting Dahlia and Liam to the Stone Innovations headquarters. Show them around, let them see what we do. Maybe you can come too." A breath of silence followed on Cassandra's end. "Are you sure? People might talk. Your employees, the media. I don't want the kids or me to cause a scene." His voice softened. "I'm sure. They're my kids, and I'd like them to see what their dad has built. And if people talk, let them. I'm not hiding them." Cassandra's heart fluttered at the quiet intensity in his tone. They agreed on Saturday morning. After hanging up, she found herself exhaling in a rush. It was one thing to visit the Science Museum or meet casually, but stepping into Daniel's professional stronghold, where he was CEO, a man with influence and resources, felt like a bigger step. Still, for the sake of the twins, she decided to trust him. On Saturday, the sleek black sedan arrived at Cassandra's building early. She descended with Dahlia and Liam, each child sporting excited smiles. Daniel stepped out of the car to greet them, swiftly opening the door. If Cassandra noticed the curious stares from a neighbor or two, she pretended not to care. They settled in for the drive downtown, the twins bombarding Daniel with questions about the headquarters. Does it really have robots? What about secret rooms? Is there an arcade? Their excitement was contagious. Daniel's eyes glowed with a father's pride. "We do have a few fun areas. Maybe not fully arcades, but I think you'll like them." Cassandra, seated beside him, couldn't help but notice the lightness in his expression. She remembered a time he was consumed by tension, always chasing the next deal, grumbling about endless work. The man in front of her now seemed eager to share, to slow down, to reconnect. It stirred a cautious hope inside her. The car pulled up to a towering structure of glass and steel. Stone Innovations HQ was a monument to Daniel's ambition, with enormous windows reflecting the city skyline. As they entered through polished revolving doors, security guards nodded respectfully, and a receptionist stood poised behind a futuristic desk. The lobby itself was bright and airy, an artistic marriage of technology and modern design. Screens on the walls displayed rotating images of the company's products, sleek devices, software interfaces, and innovative projects in robotics. Dahlia and Liam stood wide-eyed, soaking in the grandeur. Cassandra placed a gentle hand on each child's shoulder, feeling slightly overwhelmed herself. Daniel guided them to a private elevator using a special keycard. In that short elevator ride, Dahlia clung to Cassandra's arm, and Liam peppered Daniel with more questions. "Do you have flying cars? Will there be virtual reality?" Daniel grinned. "We have a few prototypes, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. I'll show you what we can." The elevator opened onto a spacious floor filled with open workstations, glass-walled conference rooms, and pods that employees used for brainstorming sessions. Soft, natural light streamed in through massive windows overlooking the city. Everywhere, people worked in collaborative clusters or tinkered with prototypes. A hush of curiosity fell as employees noticed Daniel entering with a woman and 2 children at his side. Some discreetly whispered or exchanged glances. Others just smiled, recognizing this as a personal visit. Daniel led his little group through a short tour, introducing them to his executive assistant, a couple of friendly engineers, and a marketing manager who happily boasted about upcoming product launches. For Dahlia and Liam, it was like stepping into a futuristic playground of ideas. Their eyes gleamed whenever they spotted a robot prototype rolling across the floor or a holographic display illustrating complex data. Cassandra watched carefully, staying near them, but also quietly observing Daniel's demeanor. He seemed relaxed, almost proud to show his children the environment he had created. They arrived at a section labeled Innovation Lab, authorized personnel only. Daniel swiped a key card, and they entered a large room filled with cutting-edge tech, 3D printers, circuit boards, drones, and half-assembled gadgets. A few engineers in lab coats nodded in greeting. Liam's mouth fell open, and even Dahlia's typical composure wavered as she exclaimed, "This is so cool!" Cassandra murmured, "Wow," under her breath, recalling how Daniel once worked out of a tiny shared office in their old apartment building. Now, he had all this. A pang of regret clashed with admiration. She was proud of him, even though his success had come at such a cost to their family. One engineer, a genial woman named Shirin, approached with a warm smile. She showed the twins a miniature drone that could perform simple tasks. "Here, want to try?" Shirin asked, handing the controls to Liam. Under Daniel's watchful eye, Liam maneuvered the drone through a small obstacle course of cardboard pillars. Dahlia let out a squeal when it nearly bumped into a wall. The children's laughter echoed. Meanwhile, Cassandra took a step back, letting them enjoy the moment. Daniel eventually turned his gaze to her. For a second, they stood apart from the group, the lab's hum filling the space between them. "Thank you for this," Cassandra said, her voice quiet. "They're so happy." He glanced at the twins, smile touching his lips. "I'm happy too," he admitted. "I didn't realize how much I wanted them to see this, what I've done, until now. It just feels more real." She nodded. "It's impressive, Daniel. All of it." He hesitated, searching her face. "But it's not enough," he said softly. "I realized at some point, what's all this worth if I don't share it with my family?" The admission was raw, a moment of honesty that pried open old wounds. Cassandra let out a gentle sigh but said nothing. Maybe there was nothing to say. Soon, Shirin handed the controller to Dahlia so she could try, and the drone wobbled, landing softly at Cassandra's feet. The group laughed. Amid the cheerful buzz, Daniel tapped a stylus on a digital screen. A file opened, displaying concept drawings for a new product, a wearable device for health monitoring. Liam and Dahlia crowded around, intrigued by the futuristic designs. After nearly an hour in the lab, Daniel suggested they move on. He guided them to a lounge area near the top floor, where employees sometimes relaxed or held informal meetings. It included a small game corner, foosball, air hockey, and a couple of arcade-style machines. Dahlia and Liam practically sprinted to the nearest game, battling each other on a racing simulator. Cassandra couldn't help but laugh at their competitive shrieks. Daniel took the opportunity to lead Cassandra to a wide window overlooking the city. The view was breathtaking. Skyscrapers below, the river gleaming in the distance, sunlight glinting off distant cars like tiny beads of light. She felt him stand close enough that she sensed his warmth, but not so close as to intrude. "I'm trying," he murmured, eyes fixed on the horizon. "I know it won't erase the past, but I want to prove to you that I'm not the same person who left all those years ago." Cassandra's voice emerged, low and guarded. "I see you making an effort. The kids see it too. But you have to understand. I spent so long doing everything alone, Daniel. Trust doesn't come back instantly." His jaw tightened slightly, as if bracing against guilt. "I understand. I'll keep trying as long as it takes." Then he turned, giving her his full attention. "And you? How are you, Cassandra? I mean truly, outside of the kids." She blinked, unused to him asking about her personal life with such sincerity. "I'm all right," she answered, swallowing. "Work is steady. I do part-time at the art studio, and I've begun selling some of my sculptures online. It's not high-end galleries, but it helps." He nodded, taking in every word. "You deserve recognition. That piece at the gallery was stunning." The memory of her reunion sculpture made her chest tighten. She offered a hint of a smile, then looked away, redirecting attention to Dahlia and Liam, who were now challenging each other at air hockey. "I guess we'll see what the future holds," she said quietly. Daniel didn't press further, sensing the fragility of the moment. Instead, he drifted over to the kids, praising Dahlia for a sharp hit that sent the puck whizzing into the goal. Cassandra exhaled, glancing out at the cityscape once more. She recognized the mix of longing and caution inside herself, like standing on the edge of a precipice, uncertain if stepping forward would bring flight or a fall. After exploring more of Stone Innovation's common areas, they convened near the lobby. Daniel led them into a private dining space where he had arranged a simple lunch, fresh sandwiches, fruit, bottled water. An unspoken peace settled among them as they ate. Dahlia recounted her favorite exhibit upstairs, and Liam rattled off a list of things he wanted to build someday. Cassandra contributed an occasional wry comment about the kids' insatiable curiosity. Daniel listened with rapt attention, each shared laugh carving deeper cracks into the walls that once kept him distant. He noticed every detail, how Dahlia scrunched her nose when concentrating, how Liam used big words for his age, how Cassandra's eyes flickered with tenderness when she thought no one was watching. Eventually, the time came to leave. Daniel escorted them through the lobby, employees nodding polite goodbyes. Outside, a warm breeze brushed across their faces. Liam and Dahlia still bubbled with excitement. As the sedan pulled up, Cassandra turned to Daniel. "They loved it," she said earnestly. "Thank you for today." He smiled, relieved. "I'm really glad. Maybe we can do more visits whenever you and the kids feel comfortable." Dahlia spontaneously wrapped her arms around Daniel's waist. He gently returned her hug, looking momentarily moved beyond words. Liam chimed in. "Next time, can we see the VR stuff? Shirin mentioned there's a new prototype hidden somewhere." Daniel chuckled. "We'll see what we can arrange." Then his eyes met Cassandra's, carrying a silent question. "Is it okay for me to keep doing this?" She gave a small nod, appreciation shining in her gaze. "Sure," she said softly. "Let's keep moving forward." Within moments, they were settled into the car. Daniel offered to drive them back to Cassandra's apartment. On the ride, Dahlia practically bounced in her seat, describing every detail she'd seen, while Liam sat with a contented grin, hugging the little drone kit Daniel's colleague Shirin had gifted him. Cassandra, meanwhile, let herself relax against the seat. For the first time in a very long while, she dared to imagine a picture of life where Daniel wasn't just a painful memory, but a genuine partner, though the path to that picture remained shrouded in caution. When they reached Cassandra's building, Daniel stepped out, opened the car door for them. The twins hopped onto the sidewalk, excitedly greeting a neighbor. Before parting, Cassandra and Daniel lingered a moment. "I might call later in the week," he said, quieter now that the children were distracted. "Maybe we can plan something for next weekend." She considered. "We'll see how schedules line up, but yes, call me." A small, tender smile crossed her lips. "Today was good." He nodded, eyes brimming with gratitude. Then, with a final goodbye to the kids, Daniel stepped back into the sedan, watching as they disappeared into the apartment lobby. As the driver pulled away, Daniel leaned his head against the window, letting the echoes of the day wash over him. Each step with Cassandra and the twins felt both exhilarating and precarious, but he was determined not to lose this fragile second chance. Upstairs in her apartment, Cassandra waited until the kids scurried off to change out of their clothes and work on small art projects. Then she collapsed onto the couch. Staring at the slip of paper on the coffee table, one that bore the Stone Innovations logo where Daniel had jotted a note, she allowed herself a trembling breath. She didn't know where this would end. But if the children could trust him, maybe, just maybe, she could too. The following week found the Stone family, if it could be called that, navigating a precarious yet promising rhythm. Daniel was careful not to overstep, sending Cassandra brief texts to check on the children's day-to-day lives. Did Dahlia ace her spelling quiz? How was Liam's building club meeting? In response, Cassandra offered guarded but polite answers, sometimes adding small anecdotes from their day. though the conversation rarely delved into the adults' tangled history. It was a welcome reprieve from years of silence. For Dahlia and Liam, life glowed with a new sense of anticipation. Each night, they asked their mother when they would see Dad again. Cassandra noticed that both children slipped more frequently into that word, Dad. She couldn't blame them. After all, Daniel was finally acting like the father they'd always wondered about. Part of her heart clenched when she heard them call him that so effortlessly. How many times had she dreaded those sorts of questions, afraid of how she might answer? But with Daniel proving consistently present, the kids seemed to reflect his growing reliability, trusting that he wouldn't let them down. On Wednesday evening, while Cassandra checked her email, she glanced into the living room where Liam and Dahlia sat side by side, each drawing pictures with crayons and colored pencils. Liam was attempting to blueprint a new contraption based on something he'd seen at Stone Innovations, a small drone featuring retractable wings. Dahlia, on the other hand, was sketching swirling silhouettes of 2 tall figures and 2 smaller ones. Cassandra's throat tightened as she recognized the shapes as a family portrait. The subtle warmth in that scene tore at Cassandra's protective shell. Yes, Daniel was stepping up. Yes, the children were happier. But she also struggled with the raw realization that her carefully constructed single-parent life was changing fast. She'd gotten used to making every decision alone, to coping with her own brand of resilience. Now, letting Daniel in threatened to topple that balance. Still, by Thursday, she found herself texting him first. "Kids are free Sunday afternoon if you want to see them. Maybe a picnic at Riverside Park?" The moment she hit send, her heart thundered, half regretting it, half relieved she could be the one reaching out. His reply came swift. "I'd love to. Let me know what time is best, and I'll be there." Sunday dawned bright and mild, perfect for an outdoor outing. Riverside Park sprawled alongside the city's main river, with winding trails, lush grass, and plenty of play areas. Cassandra and the twins arrived around noon, a wicker picnic basket in hand, courtesy of a neighbor who'd lent it after hearing their plans. Dahlia carried a small blanket, while Liam shouldered a backpack stuffed with a frisbee, a soccer ball, and a half-built puzzle he insisted he might finish in the grass. Daniel texted to say he was a few minutes behind schedule. Cassandra didn't mind. She found an open patch of green near a line of sycamore trees and directed the children to spread out the blanket. By the time Daniel's figure came into view, walking briskly down the path, Liam had already started kicking a soccer ball around with Dahlia, who struggled to keep up in her sandals. Cassandra watched them, a faint smile tugging her lips. "Hey," Daniel greeted softly as he approached, slightly out of breath from rushing. He wore comfortable jeans and a casual button-down shirt, the morning sun catching the subtle silver at his temples, evidence of the time that had passed since their younger days. "I hope I'm not too late." Cassandra shook her head. "We only just got here ourselves." She gestured at the blanket. "I brought some lunch for the kids, and for you, if you haven't eaten." He crouched to help arrange the blanket corners, casting a quick glance at Dahlia and Liam. "Thank you," he said, warmth in his voice. "And thanks for inviting me." Dahlia spotted him first. She dashed over, soccer ball cradled in her arms. "Dad!" she said, grinning. Then, as if unsure if she was allowed to keep using the word, she hesitated, but Daniel gently set a hand on her shoulder, a silent affirmation. Liam jogged up, panting lightly, eyes shining. After a brief exchange of greetings, Liam lifted the soccer ball. "Want to play?" he asked Daniel. "I've been practicing with some kids at school." Daniel's face brightened. "Of course. Show me what you've got." He and Liam moved a few paces away, setting up an impromptu father-son practice. Dahlia lingered, laughing as she tried to intercept their passes. Cassandra remained on the picnic blanket, content to watch. For a moment, the sight carried such simple joy, sunlight dancing in the kids' hair, Daniel's smile more free than she'd seen it in years, that Cassandra struggled against a surge of old memories and unspoken hopes. When they finally took a break, cheeks flushed from the midday sun, Cassandra opened the basket and began laying out a modest spread: sandwiches, sliced fruit, bottled water, and a thermos of lemonade. Daniel settled down cross-legged, letting Dahlia and Liam claim positions close to him. The children chattered about school, about how their teacher planned a spring pageant, and Liam's big robotics project for an upcoming fair. Cassandra added the occasional detail, nodding as Dahlia recounted a comedic mishap involving spilled paint in art class. All the while, Daniel listened intently, occasionally asking clarifying questions. Cassandra found it surreal to see him so engaged in the mundane details of everyday life, exactly the kind of thing he used to dismiss as distractions from his grander goals. Now he soaked it in, as though starved for a taste of normalcy. When lunch was finished, the twins ran off to explore the playground area, leaving the adults a rare moment of semi-privacy on the blanket. Cassandra took a sip of lemonade, fiddling with her cup as she spoke. "They're really thriving," she observed quietly. "It used to be they'd ask about you and I never knew how to respond. But now—" Daniel's gaze dropped to his folded hands. "I'm sorry," he said, voice low. "I wish I could go back and fix those years. But all I can do now is be here and prove I'm not leaving again." She offered a small nod. "I appreciate what you're doing, truly. And they do too. I can see it." A hush stretched between them, thick with questions unspoken. Cassandra recalled the day she discovered she was pregnant, the frantic calls to Daniel's office that never got through, the coldness of his lawyer's statements during the divorce. He'd been forging an empire, oblivious to the new life taking shape without him. She had learned to rely on herself, never believing she'd do more than mail him child support requests, if that. But here he was, physically present, emotionally present. Daniel cleared his throat, drawing her attention. "How about you?" he asked carefully. "What's next for your art? You mentioned selling sculptures. Have you thought about stepping into a bigger marketplace? I might have some contacts if you're interested." He tried to keep his tone neutral, not wanting to sound like he was overstepping or offering charity. Cassandra hesitated. She could almost hear her old resentment flaring up. He was gone. He had no right to fix or elevate her career. Yet she reminded herself that Daniel might genuinely want to help, not from pity, but from admiration. "I'm not sure," she admitted softly. "I've gotten used to being independent. The idea of relying on your connections feels complicated." He nodded in understanding. "No pressure. I only wanted you to know the door's open. You're talented, Cassandra. That's not a favor. That's a fact." Her cheeks warmed. She glanced at the playground where Dahlia and Liam climbed a small tower, shrieking with laughter as they waved down at their mother and father. It was almost too perfect. Cassandra's eyes returned to Daniel's. "Thank you," she managed. "I'll think about it." They let silence settle again, though it felt less strained. The late spring breeze swept through the park, rustling the leaves overhead. Nearby, a couple strolled hand in hand, and another family picnicked with a toddler squealing joyfully. Cassandra realized how normal it all felt, like a tableau of a family that had never been broken. She caught herself in the daydream, reminding herself not to get lost in illusions. Eventually, the children clamored back, both wanting to build a small fortress with sticks and leaves under one of the large sycamore trees. Daniel volunteered to help. Cassandra watched from the blanket as they crouched, carefully propping twigs against a low branch, forming a makeshift teepee. Dahlia scurried about, collecting green leaves and dandelions for decoration, while Liam tried to anchor the structure with a piece of driftwood he found near the riverbank. Their laughter carried across the grass, and Cassandra's chest constricted with both joy and an ache she couldn't name. After so many years of single motherhood, she hadn't realized how beautiful it might be to share moments like these with someone. When she rose and joined them, Daniel flashed a grin, like a boy himself, dirt smudged on his hands. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, they packed up the remnants of lunch, carefully folding the blanket. The kids objected to leaving so soon, so Cassandra agreed to one last game of freeze tag on the lawn. She participated half-heartedly, stepping aside to catch her breath, while Liam tried to freeze Daniel and Dahlia with unexpected speed. Daniel, tall and agile, skillfully dodged each lunge but let himself be caught in a moment of playful surrender so the kids could squeal in victory. Finally, with the day slipping away, they agreed it was time to head home. Daniel offered to drive them again, but Cassandra opted to walk. "It's not far," she said. "We like the stroll." He accepted with an understanding nod, not pushing the point. They walked together until they reached a nearby parking lot where Daniel's car awaited. The children hugged him goodbye, all wide smiles and bright eyes. Dahlia clung a bit longer than usual. "Will we see you again this week?" she asked in a small voice. Daniel exchanged a glance with Cassandra. "I hope so," he said softly. "But it depends on your mom and your schedules. We'll figure something out soon." A simple answer, but one that contained the promise of continuity. Cassandra gave him a brief nod of affirmation, and the four parted ways, Daniel stepping toward his car, and Cassandra leading the kids back along a tree-lined path. Liam kept recounting the day's highlights, while Dahlia hugged her mother's arm, wearing a dreamy expression. Cassandra felt that old swirl of emotions, but a new undercurrent of calm threaded through it. Maybe she was allowing herself to believe in the possibility that they could form a family again, albeit slowly, with caution. She caught one more glimpse of Daniel as he climbed into the driver's seat. He waved through the windshield, wearing an expression she could only describe as grateful. That evening, back in her modest apartment, Cassandra tucked Liam and Dahlia into bed. After story time, Dahlia posed a question that nearly froze Cassandra in her tracks. "Mom, are you and Dad going to get married again?" It was so earnest, so innocent. Cassandra swallowed, forcing a soft smile. "We'll see what happens, sweetie. For now, let's just take things one day at a time." Liam, yawning, rolled over. "It'd be cool if we all lived together," he mumbled. Then he drifted off, leaving Cassandra to stare at the quietly breathing forms of her children. She felt tears gather at the edges of her eyes, tears of love, of longing, of fear. There was no easy way to navigate the future, no blueprint like the drone Liam wanted to build. All she had was the hope that Daniel's contrition was real, that her own heart could bear opening again. After turning off the bedside lamp, Cassandra tiptoed to the living room. She settled onto the couch, phone in hand, scanning through a few photos she'd snapped at the park. One showed Daniel crouched beside Liam, helping to arrange sticks, while Dahlia reached over to add leaves. Their faces were lit by laughter. Her breath caught at the beauty of that simple moment. A message popped up on her screen. "Thank you for today." It meant a lot. She realized Daniel must have texted her the moment he got home. With trembling fingers, she typed back, "It meant a lot to us, too. Good night." As she sent it, Cassandra glanced out her window at the city lights. They sparkled like tiny beacons, unknowing and indifferent to her personal struggles. Nevertheless, she felt a flicker of optimism. She wasn't sure where this path would lead, but for the first time in years, she allowed herself a whisper of faith in second chances. Rumors had a way of circulating in even the largest of cities, and Daniel Stone's world was no exception. Word traveled through corporate circles that he had been spotted multiple times with a woman and 2 children, softening his notoriously driven persona. A few tabloids speculated that the billionaire CEO was quietly reconciling with a secret family, though no official statements were made. Daniel brushed off the gossip as irrelevant noise. The only opinions that mattered were those of Cassandra, Dahlia, and Liam. Yet he couldn't fully dismiss his concern for how the children might react if hounded by media or if Cassandra's privacy was intruded upon. That alone made him double down on discreet measures, like asking his driver to park a block or two away when he visited, or meeting in quieter public places. For now, Cassandra and the kids deserved to grow this budding relationship without a spotlight glaring down. Despite the hush and caution, progress was steady. The twins began inviting Daniel to their small milestones, a classroom open house, a school art fair, or a weekend robotics workshop at the local community center. Daniel was quick to RSVP yes each time, shuffling his demanding schedule to accommodate them. At some events he arrived in a casual jacket, slipping into the back row so he wouldn't cause a stir. Still, even in his low-profile stance, parents recognized him. Whispers sometimes followed, but no one openly disturbed him while he admired Liam's or Dahlia's achievements. One Thursday afternoon, as Daniel finished reviewing contracts in his glass-walled office, his phone chimed with a text from Cassandra. "Can we talk tonight? Kids will be at my sister's for a sleepover." Daniel's pulse quickened. Cassandra rarely arranged adult-only meetups. Eager to comply, he wrote back, "Absolutely. Just let me know when and where." She suggested an unassuming cafe on the edge of downtown, away from the busiest streets. That evening, after wrapping up a few urgent emails, Daniel drove himself, choosing to forego his personal driver for extra discretion. The cafe was small, its entrance framed by potted plants and warm yellow lights. Daniel inhaled the scent of fresh pastries as he stepped inside. Cassandra was already there, sitting by a window, hands curled around a mug of chamomile tea. He paused for a heartbeat. She looked composed and lovely, wearing a simple sweater and jeans. She offered a brief smile, though her eyes hinted at tension. Daniel approached, greeting her softly, and took the seat opposite. "Everything okay?" he asked gently, noticing her pensive expression. Cassandra let out a quiet sigh. "Yes and no," she replied. "The kids are fine. They're actually excited to spend the night at my sister's, but I wanted to talk to you about something else." She swirled her tea absently, trying to choose her words. Daniel tensed inwardly, preparing for the worst. Maybe she wanted to limit his visits or was uneasy about the kids calling him Dad, but he forced himself to stay calm. "I'm listening," he said, leaning forward. Her gaze flicked to the passers-by outside the cafe window. "It's about us," she said softly, her voice carrying an undercurrent of vulnerability. "I've spent years building a life for myself, for the kids. I need to know if you're here to stay, or if you're going to chase the next big expansion overseas and vanish again." He swallowed, taken aback by the directness of the question, though he should have expected it. "Cassandra," he murmured, keeping his voice low. "I promise I have no intention of disappearing. It isn't a whim. I'm not the man I was." A small tremor in her jaw betrayed strong emotions. "I want to believe that. I do. It's just, letting you fully into our lives is risky. I'm trying to protect the children from heartbreak, protect myself too." Her eyes shimmered with unresolved pain. Daniel reached across the small table, tentatively covering her hand with his. He sensed her flinch, but she didn't pull away. "I understand," he said, voice raw with sincerity. "The only thing I can do is be consistent. I won't make grand promises beyond that. You'll see it in my actions." Cassandra exhaled, relief and wariness mingling on her face. "I'm not asking for a ring on my finger. I just need to know we're on the same page about the future." He nodded firmly. "We are," he said. "I want to be there for every step the kids take. And yes, I also want to rebuild something with you." His tone grew hushed. "If you'll let me." She glanced down, where his fingers gently touched hers. Then she closed her eyes for a moment as though steeling herself. "I want that too," she whispered. "I'm just scared." He squeezed her hand. They stayed that way, unspoken words filling the air. Eventually, she withdrew, as if needing space to breathe. Daniel could see the conflict in her posture, hope battling fear. In the lull, a server arrived to take Daniel's order. He requested a latte, and Cassandra asked for a refill of her tea. The server shuffled away, leaving them alone again in the ambient chatter of the cafe. Cassandra cleared her throat. One more thing, media attention. The kids have asked why people whisper or stare sometimes when we're all together. They've seen pictures of you online, read little bits, enough to piece together that you're kind of a big deal. She gave a wry smile. Daniel grimaced apologetically. It's part of my world. Part of why I tried to keep my personal life so contained. I can try to shield them, but I can't promise it'll never happen. I understand, Cassandra acknowledged. I just want us to be prepared if paparazzi or reporters become an issue. The kids deserve privacy. He nodded. Absolutely. I'll talk to my team about stepping up personal privacy measures for you and the children without making it too intrusive. I don't want them feeling like they're under constant guard. When the drinks arrived, they shifted the conversation to lighter topics. Dahlia's blossoming art skills, Liam's insatiable curiosity for robotics, how Cassandra's sculpture sales were slowly picking up. Daniel listened intently, his features softening into genuine warmth whenever she described the children's day-to-day triumphs. After about an hour, Cassandra finished her second cup of tea. She looked at Daniel with a vulnerability he rarely witnessed. "Thank you for meeting me," she said quietly. "I needed to say all that without the kids around." He offered a gentle smile. "You can always talk to me," he said, "and I appreciate you being honest. I'll keep showing up, if you'll keep letting me." Her eyes shone with cautious relief. "We'll do this," she replied, "step by step." Neither said it aloud, but an unspoken agreement passed between them. They were forging a path forward, uncertain, but hopeful. As they left the cafe, Daniel walked her to her car. The evening air carried a subtle chill, and Cassandra pulled her sweater tighter around her. Under the dim glow of a street lamp, they paused, lingering as if both reluctant to part. He lifted a hand, tucking a stray lock of hair behind her ear. "Good night," he murmured. For a moment, his gaze lingered on her lips, a silent question hanging in the air. Cassandra's breath caught. Perhaps if this had been years ago, she might have leaned in impulsively, but now she simply placed a light hand on his chest and nodded. "Good night," she echoed. Then, with a faint smile, she slipped into her car. Daniel stepped back, watching her drive off, his heart racing. If that moment had taught him anything, it was that patience was essential. He would earn her trust, one day at a time. The next morning, Daniel awoke with a sense of renewed purpose. Usually his routine involved scanning overnight reports, handling urgent emails, and diving into back-to-back meetings. But a new priority in his schedule beckoned: lunch with Liam at school for a Parents in Tech mini-fair. Liam had timidly asked if Daniel would come speak about stone innovations to his class. Daniel had agreed without hesitation, pushing a board meeting to later in the day. At the school auditorium, a handful of parents took turns describing their professions. There was a nurse, a software developer, a firefighter, and a local bakery owner, each sharing insights in a kid-friendly format. When it was Daniel's turn, the hush was palpable. Word had spread. A high-profile CEO was about to speak. Even the teachers seemed eager. Daniel stood at the front, wearing a simple suit jacket but opting for no tie to seem more approachable. Liam, seated in the front row with his classmates, watched with bright, proud eyes. Daniel cleared his throat, speaking in a gentle tone, explaining how his company designed new technology to help people in everyday life, like health monitoring wearables or user-friendly robotics. He kept it light, avoiding the corporate jargon, focusing instead on how curiosity fuels innovation. "There's no one right way to invent or create," Daniel told the wide-eyed kids. "When I was your age, I loved messing with gadgets and building little contraptions. The key is believing that your ideas can make a difference. Stay curious. One child raised a hand. Are you really Liam's dad? A slight ripple of giggles washed through the students. Liam looked mortified for a split second, but Daniel smiled reassuringly. Yes, I am, he answered, and I'm very proud of him. He caught Liam's eye, sending a silent message. You have nothing to be embarrassed about. The child nodded, apparently satisfied. When Daniel wrapped up, the teacher led a round of applause. Liam's face shone with excitement, and he darted up to Daniel's side. That was so cool, the boy mumbled, trying to mask his enthusiasm. Daniel ruffled his hair affectionately. After the presentations, the children dispersed for lunch in the cafeteria. Liam insisted Daniel stay, so they stood in line together, plates in hand. Daniel bought a simple meal, mac and cheese, fruit cup, and milk, relishing the chance to experience his son's world firsthand. Fellow parents lingered, some shaking Daniel's hand, praising the speech. A few made small talk about stone innovations, but Daniel politely steered the conversation back to the kids. Sitting at a table crammed with third graders, Daniel felt an odd but welcome sense of humility. Here, no corporate hierarchy mattered. It was just a father eating school lunch with his child. Liam beamed the entire time, occasionally boasting to his classmates that he was going to visit Dad's company again soon. The phrase Dad resonated in Daniel's ears, each time reminding him of the second chance he'd nearly forfeited. When lunch ended, Daniel said his farewells and promised Liam he would try to come back for another school event soon. The boy practically glowed with joy. Driving away, Daniel understood more clearly than ever how each moment, no matter how mundane, could be precious to a child craving a father's presence. The business call waiting on his phone seemed secondary now. By mid-afternoon, Daniel was back in the gleaming Stone Innovations offices, juggling the usual corporate demands. His assistant updated him on new proposals and scheduled a critical investor meeting for the coming week. Even so, Daniel's mind occasionally drifted to that cafeteria, where Liam's grin had outshone any success he'd had in the boardroom. In a spare moment, he texted Cassandra, "Spoke at Liam's school. He was amazing, so proud of him." She replied quickly, "He can't stop talking about it. Thank you." Her simple words, brimming with gratitude, sent a small thrill through Daniel. Each exchange felt like another puzzle piece sliding into place, forging a path toward the life he'd once thought was impossible to reclaim. As evening settled and Daniel finished his last meeting, he glanced around his plush, modern office. Nothing had changed physically, but the atmosphere felt transformed. He no longer saw the space as a fortress protecting him from personal entanglements. Instead, he felt it was a platform, a means to provide for his family, to share with them, to grow with them. He flicked off the overhead lights, leaving only the muted glow of the city skyline beyond the glass walls. Pausing at the threshold, Daniel let a faint smile rest on his lips. Yes, the road to redemption was long and uncertain. But for the first time, he believed it could be paved with hope rather than regret. In the wake of Daniel's lunchtime visit to Liam's school, a tentative new rhythm seemed to settle over their lives. For the first time since returning to Cassandra and the children, Daniel began to believe that normalcy, real, healthy normalcy, might be within reach. Liam bragged to his classmates that his dad built all sorts of awesome stuff, and Dahlia practiced her dance routines knowing Daniel promised to watch one of her rehearsals soon. Even Cassandra found herself relying less on hesitation and more on trust, though she still guarded her heart. It was nearing the end of the month when the first crack of tension appeared in Daniel's newly found peace. He had just ended a long meeting at Stone Innovations, a strategic planning session with his top executives, when his assistant informed him that he was needed in the executive boardroom. A group of foreign investors, integral to a massive upcoming expansion, had arrived unannounced, asking for a private update. Daniel pressed his lips together. These were the same investors who once pushed him to open overseas branches at breakneck speed. They were partial architects of his old life, the endless hustle, the global takeovers, and the 24/7 demands that had overshadowed everything else. For the sake of Stone Innovations, these relationships still mattered. Sighing, he nodded. "Let them know I'll be there in 5 minutes." The conversation that followed was cordial but heavy with implication. Seated around a polished conference table, the investors expressed concern that Daniel's family matters were taking up more of his time. Although they didn't say it so bluntly, he could sense their subtle disapproval, since word had reached their circles that the famously work-driven CEO now left early on some days or skipped certain evening functions. "We simply want to ensure," said one of the financiers, a tall man with a clipped accent, "that your personal reorientation does not impede the global expansion plan. We expect Stone Innovations to remain at the forefront, especially in Asia and Europe." Daniel kept his composure, leaning back in his chair with a quiet confidence. "Stone Innovations is well on track," he replied. "Recent prototypes are ahead of schedule, and our partnerships remain strong. My personal life hasn't compromised productivity." A different investor, a stern-faced woman, folded her hands. "We've noticed your absence at some late-night strategy sessions. That used to be your hallmark, Mr. Stone." He swallowed a flash of annoyance. "I've appointed strong senior directors who handle a significant portion of planning. Micromanaging every detail was never sustainable. My presence is still there where it's needed, but the company is evolving, as it should." The meeting dragged on for nearly an hour, with Daniel patiently fielding questions, reaffirming his commitment to growth, and promising they would not be disappointed. By the end, the investors seemed mollified, though not entirely satisfied. As they rose to leave, one of them patted Daniel on the shoulder. "We're counting on your full focus," the man said kindly but firmly. "We know family is important, but business demands a certain relentlessness." Daniel forced a polite smile. "I understand. Rest assured, Stone Innovations is my priority." Inside, though, he bristled. For years he had lived exactly that way, giving Stone Innovations his complete, unrelenting energy. It cost him his marriage, his chance to know Dahlia and Liam in their earliest years. He wasn't about to revert just because a few stakeholders thought fatherhood was a distraction. Once the meeting ended, he retreated to his office, closed the door, and allowed his frustration to seep out in a low exhale. The city skyline glimmered through the expansive windows, as though reminding him that success had multiple layers. For the first time in ages, Daniel felt a surge of defiance toward the very model of success he'd once embraced without question. He shook off the tension and glanced at the clock. It was nearly 6 p.m. He had planned to see Dahlia's dance rehearsal in half an hour. The old Daniel might have canceled, caught up in business demands. But not today. Gathering his jacket, he instructed his assistant to hold all calls, ignoring the faint disapproval in her eyes. This was one of those moments that mattered more. Over at Dahlia's small dance studio, the hallway bustled with parents chatting while their daughters stretched or adjusted ribbons on ballet shoes. Cassandra was seated on a bench, eyes scanning the hall. When Daniel strode in, his expression warm despite the day's pressures. Relief touched her features. "You made it," she breathed, standing to greet him. The subtle flicker of uncertainty in her gaze told him she might have doubted he would show. He offered a reassuring nod. "I promised Dahlia, didn't I? I wasn't about to break that promise." She smiled, and they moved into the rehearsal room. Dozens of young girls in pastel leotards and tutus flitted around, practicing positions under the watchful eye of a stern dance teacher. Dahlia spotted Daniel and Cassandra in the row of onlookers, her face lighting up. With a proud tilt of her chin, she rejoined her group, trying her best to perfect each step and turn. Daniel watched with an almost childlike awe. He had spent so many years focusing on technology and corporate expansions that witnessing something as delicate as his daughter dancing seemed revelatory. When the rehearsal ended, Dahlia hurried over, beaming. "Did you see me do the pirouette, Dad? I almost didn't wobble." He grinned, crouching to her level. "You looked amazing out there," he said. "I'm so proud of you." Cassandra laughed softly, brushing a wisp of hair from Dahlia's forehead. "You did great. Let's get you changed, and then we can grab a quick bite." Daniel felt an unexpected rush of warmth at the notion of sharing a simple meal with them after rehearsal, like a normal family routine. "If you're up for it, I know a small place nearby that serves great sandwiches," he offered. "Nothing fancy, just good." They agreed and soon were walking the few blocks to the cafe Daniel recommended. Dahlia chatted away, detailing every correction the dance teacher gave. Cassandra listened, occasionally glancing at Daniel to gauge his mood. He seemed lighter than usual, though she also sensed a lingering tension, perhaps from his day at work. Still, he hadn't let it overshadow their family moment. In the cafe, they settled into a corner booth. Dahlia, still radiating post-rehearsal excitement, chose a grilled cheese sandwich, while Cassandra opted for a simple salad. Daniel, in an effort to keep it casual, chose a turkey club. As they waited for the food, conversation flowed easily. Dahlia teased Daniel about trying a dance move, which he politely refused, laughing at himself. Cassandra joined in with gentle humor. For a brief moment, it felt like they'd been doing this for years. Yet beneath the laughter, Cassandra noticed Daniel rubbing his temple occasionally, as if a headache lurked. "Long day?" she asked softly. He nodded, meeting her eyes. "Investors had some concerns," he admitted. "They think I'm not spending enough time on overseas expansions. They keep hinting that I should recommit every waking hour to the company." Cassandra's lips pursed. "Do they know about us?" She kept her voice low, mindful that Dahlia was busy coloring on a napkin. He shrugged. "They've heard rumors, and they know I'm focusing more on my family. They see it as a distraction." His tone turned steely. "But I won't let them dictate my personal life anymore." Her expression softened, both impressed and concerned. "Just be careful. I don't want you losing everything you built because of us. I appreciate you being here, but I know how important your company is." "It's not more important than my children," he said firmly. "Or you." She felt her heart flip at the conviction in his voice. Before she could respond, Dahlia popped her head up from her drawing. "Mom! Dad, look!" She showed them a scribbled figure, Daniel wearing a tie, standing next to Dahlia in a tutu. "This is us at my recital next month," she announced, eyes sparkling. Daniel and Cassandra exchanged a quick look. There was an assumption in Dahlia's words that Daniel would be there, not as a guest, but almost as a rightful fixture in her life. Cassie's protective side flared for a split second. What if something forced Daniel to miss it? The heartbreak on Dahlia's face would be unbearable. But Daniel, seemingly understanding the stakes, offered a steady smile. "I'll be there," he promised. "Count on it." That night, after dinner, Daniel walked them back to their car. He noticed a stifled weariness in Cassandra's eyes, probably from the day's swirl of activity. Dahlia's energy had begun to fade as well, the adrenaline from rehearsal tapering off. The little girl hopped into the back seat, stowing her dance bag. Cassandra lingered outside the car for a moment. Daniel placed a gentle hand on the doorframe. "Thank you for letting me be part of tonight," he said. She glanced up, her features touched by the soft glow of a nearby street lamp. "Thank you for coming," she replied, voice subdued. "You looked proud of her." "I was," he affirmed. "I am." A subtle tension settled, a mixture of closeness and the unspoken distance they still navigated. Cassandra hesitated, then quietly asked, "Want to join us for dinner on Saturday? At home? Nothing fancy, just family time?" Daniel's heart thumped. He realized that an invitation to her apartment for a meal was a deeper kind of intimacy, her personal space, her sanctuary. "I'd love that," he said, hoping she could sense his gratitude. She offered a small, sincere smile. "Okay, see you Saturday then." With a short wave, she slipped into the driver's seat. As the car pulled away, Daniel stood for a while, hands in his pockets, an echo of contentment filling him. All week, Daniel counted the days to Saturday's dinner. Between investor calls and product briefings, he found himself imagining the simple scene of cooking together, maybe Dahlia helping wash vegetables, Liam rummaging for spices. He'd daydream about whether Cassandra would let him set the table or if she'd politely wave him aside. It wasn't an extravagant fantasy, yet it filled him with a warmth that overshadowed the corporate stress. But by Friday afternoon, that tension with the investors reignited. He received an urgent message. "We need a conference call with the European partners early Saturday evening. It's the only time everyone can do it." Daniel frowned at the request. Typically, he would have complied without protest. But Saturday was the dinner with Cassandra and the kids. "Reschedule," he told his assistant, scribbling notes. "I'm not available." She blinked. "Sir, they're saying it's not flexible. They have a slot at 6 p.m. London time." "Tell them I can do Sunday or Monday," Daniel insisted, his voice firm. "I won't be free Saturday night." It felt liberating, albeit risky, to push back. The assistant nodded, though her expression betrayed concern. Not an hour later, a stern email from one of the European execs landed in Daniel's inbox, urging him to reconsider. He skimmed it, heart pounding at the implied threat that the deal's timeline could be jeopardized. Nonetheless, he responded politely but unequivocally, "My schedule does not allow for Saturday evening. Let's find a mutually acceptable alternative." As soon as he hit send, a swirl of anxiety and resolve flooded him. This was the balancing act he'd known would come. He needed to stand firm, but also keep the company stable. Was he doing the right thing, or jeopardizing a multi-million-dollar partnership? Saturday arrived, and Daniel forced himself not to check his phone every 5 minutes. He spent the morning at Stone Innovations tying up loose ends, ignoring the repeated pings from overseas partners. Finally, by late afternoon, he left, determined that no last-minute crisis would overshadow the family dinner. Cassandra's apartment complex was quiet, the early evening sun casting golden rays across the courtyard. He carried a bouquet of flowers, nothing too grand, just a simple arrangement of daisies and lavender. He felt a flutter of nerves as he climbed the stairs, remembering how many times he'd once breezed in and out of places, never truly appreciating the significance of small gestures. When Cassandra opened the door, her eyes fell on the flowers, and she smiled, color rising to her cheeks. "You didn't have to," she murmured, but a flicker of happiness crinkled the corners of her eyes. Dahlia and Liam rushed up, hugging Daniel with excitement. The apartment smelled of homemade tomato sauce and fresh bread. Cozy, inviting, and brimming with the life he'd missed all these years. He handed the flowers to Cassandra, who glanced at him in a look that combined gratitude and guarded affection. Setting them in a vase, she guided him into the living room, where Liam had laid out a newly constructed toy robot on the coffee table, eager to show Daniel. Dahlia flitted between them and the kitchen, where she helped stir a pot under Cassandra's instructions. The dinner that followed was humble and absolutely perfect: spaghetti, garlic bread, a simple salad. They ate around a small wooden table, with the kids recapping their week, occasionally rolling their eyes at each other's jokes. Cassandra chimed in with mild teasing, her gaze drifting to Daniel, checking if he felt comfortable in this easy domestic setting. He did, more than he could express. After the meal, Dahlia insisted on showing off a dance move in the living room, nearly bumping into the sofa. Liam dragged Daniel to see the new drone blueprint he'd drawn. Cassandra cleared plates, but Daniel intervened, offering to wash dishes. She raised an eyebrow as if uncertain. "Really? You don't mind?" He shrugged, rolling up his sleeves. "Not at all. I want to help." So she handed him a towel, stepping aside with a curious smile. From the kitchen, Daniel could hear the kids giggling in the living room, while Cassandra lingered in the doorway, watching him rinse dishes under the warm stream of water. For a moment he wondered if she felt the same sense of surreal comfort that he did, like they were rewriting a script from years ago, but this time with sincerity and mutual respect. He finished the last dish, dried his hands, and turned around to find Cassandra waiting quietly, arms folded loosely. "Thank you," she said. "It's nice, not doing it all alone." He stepped toward her, heart thumping. That's what partners do. The word partners hung in the air, shimmering with layered meaning. Slowly he reached out, brushing the back of his fingers against hers. "I'd like to be that, if you'll let me." Her eyes welled slightly, but she smiled, leaning into his touch for a fraction of a second. "It's a start," she whispered. Then, hearing the kids approach, they broke apart, but not before a soft closeness sealed the moment. In the living room, Liam was beckoning Daniel to help fix a missing screw on the toy robot, and Dahlia excitedly laid out crayons for an impromptu family drawing session. Cassandra joined them, pulling cushions from the couch onto the floor, creating a makeshift art and engineering circle. The overhead light glowed softly as the four of them worked together, scribbling, tinkering, laughing. In that hour, any tension from the outside world, investors, expansions, uncertainty, seemed distant. When it was time for Daniel to leave, Dahlia and Liam swarmed him with hugs. Cassandra walked him to the door. In the muted light of the hallway, they lingered again, a gentle air of possibility between them. Neither spoke, but as Daniel leaned in, Cassandra stood on her toes and let him place a soft, lingering kiss on her forehead. She exhaled shakily, and he sensed how much courage it took for her to allow even that small display of affection. "Good night," he said quietly. She nodded, her voice almost trembling. "Good night. Thank you for putting us first." He smiled, a blend of relief and longing in his eyes. Then he stepped into the hallway, the door closing softly behind him. Walking down the stairs, he felt a surge of conviction. Whatever pushback came from investors or old expectations, he was certain now. His family came first. The world outside Daniel's new life, however, wasn't content to let him slip into quiet domestic bliss without a fight. The day after his heartwarming dinner at Cassandra's, a barrage of emails and calls assaulted his inbox. One of the chief European investors sent a bluntly worded message. "Stone Innovations is at a critical juncture. We cannot tolerate unnecessary delays. If Mr. Stone cannot participate in key negotiations, we'll seek other assurances." Reading it, Daniel felt a flare of anger. He'd done everything to build Stone Innovations into a global powerhouse. Long days, sleepless nights, and countless sacrifices. Now, these investors assumed they could dictate even his personal obligations. He leaned back in his office chair, pressing the heels of his palms against his eyes. Then he straightened, typed a measured reply that reaffirmed his commitment to the expansion, but also drew a line. "I will ensure the company's priorities are met without sacrificing personal responsibilities," he ended, hitting send with a sense of finality. If they wanted a CEO who lived and breathed nothing but corporate growth, they might have to look elsewhere. Still, Daniel couldn't deny a coil of worry tightening in his gut. If investors threatened to withdraw, the company's valuation could plummet, and employees might be at risk. That knowledge pressed on him like a heavy weight throughout the day. Yet thoughts of Cassandra, Dahlia, and Liam gave him the fortitude to stand by his decisions. That evening, he planned to visit Cassandra's apartment briefly, just to drop off a small gift for Dahlia's upcoming dance recital and a robotics kit Liam had been eyeing. But as he was about to leave his office, his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen. An overseas number, likely the investors again. Sighing, he answered. "Mr. Stone," a clipped voice said, "we've tried to accommodate your schedule, but this continues to be an issue. Our partners need assurances of your full engagement, especially with the new product launch timeline. Are we going to finalize these deals or not?" Daniel forced an even tone. "I've agreed to reschedule. I can't keep rearranging my personal obligations every time something pops up at the last minute. We must operate on a more strategic timeline, not just reactive demands." A pause on the line, then a frosty reply. We admire your vision, but we question the level of dedication you can now provide. We expect results, or we'll seek them elsewhere. The call ended, leaving Daniel's heart pounding. Memories of his old life flared up, the relentlessness, the all-night work sessions, the suffocating sense that his entire worth hinged on appeasing these power brokers. He clenched his fists. No, he told himself, he wouldn't go back to that. He had a family now. He wouldn't abandon them again. By the time Daniel arrived at Cassandra's building, it was nearly dusk. He stepped out of his car carrying 2 small gift bags. To his relief, Cassandra was waiting in the lobby, greeting him with a curious smile. Dahlia and Liam were upstairs, finishing homework, she explained. He smiled, eager to see them, but Cassandra sensed the tension in his eyes as they rode the elevator up. Tough day? She asked gently. He exhaled. These investors, they're pressing me hard. It's frustrating. His voice grew quieter. They essentially want me to prove I can still be the same workaholic CEO who never says no. Worry flickered across Cassandra's face. I'm sorry, she said, unlocking the apartment door. But you're standing your ground, right? He nodded with a grim set to his jaw. Yeah, I am. It's not easy. She rested a hand briefly on his arm, a quiet gesture of solidarity. Then they stepped inside, and Dahlia and Liam sprang up from the kitchen table, exclaiming happily when they saw Daniel's gift bags. Immediately, the stress melted a little from his shoulders. He handed Dahlia a sleek box wrapped with a purple ribbon. For your recital, he said. When she opened it, she gasped at the beautiful pair of ballet slippers inside, a high-quality brand he'd asked a friend at a dance supply store to recommend. She threw her arms around him, beaming. Thank you, Dad. Next, he turned to Liam, presenting him with a small robotics kit, this one focusing on LED sensors and programmable movements. The boy's eyes shone with excitement. Awesome, he breathed. Thanks. Can we start it now? Daniel laughed softly. How about we set a time tomorrow or the next day to build it together so we can do it step by step? Liam agreed, still examining the package as though it were a treasure map. Cassandra leaned against the counter, smiling at the children's joy. But beneath that smile, Daniel could see the concern lingering, the same worry for how he'd balance this new sense of fatherhood with the merciless demands of his empire. She caught his eye, and he gave a subtle nod, an unspoken reassurance that he wasn't going to falter. A few days later, life decided to test Daniel's resolve in earnest. A critical product demo was scheduled in Europe, a chance to showcase Stone Innovation's latest wearable tech to potential major partners. Daniel's executives urged him to travel overseas to solidify the deal. In the past, he would have booked a flight without hesitation. Now, however, the timeline clashed directly with Dahlia's much-anticipated dance recital and Liam's robotics fair. He faced a dilemma. The top brass insisted his presence overseas was essential. Investors demanded a personal guarantee from the CEO to prove his commitment. Meanwhile, Dahlia excitedly reminded him each night, "Don't forget, Dad, my recital's next week." Liam also revealed he'd been selected for a special demonstration at the robotics fair, a big honor. "I really want you to be there, Dad," he said quietly. Torn between two crucial worlds, Daniel tried everything to reschedule the overseas trip. The investors refused, pointing to rigid event dates and the presence of other top CEOs who, they claimed, would steal the spotlight if Daniel didn't attend. Stone Innovation's board, too, was divided. Some believed Daniel's personal life had started overshadowing the company's global ambitions. "This is a make-or-break opportunity, Daniel," one board member cautioned. On the eve of the product demo, the tension came to a head at a board meeting. Daniel, seated at the head of a long conference table, outlined a proposal to have his lead engineer represent the company overseas, while Daniel joined via high-quality video link. The investors present on the screen balked. The board murmured, Mr. Stone, one of the European investors said icily, "This demonstration demands your personal involvement. Are you truly so constrained by your family obligations?" Daniel's patience frayed. He straightened, shoulders squared. "I respect your concerns, but Stone Innovations isn't a one-man show. Our lead engineer knows the product inside out. I'll be virtually present if any immediate decisions are needed." Another voice chimed in. "That's not the same as being physically there, shaking hands, displaying leadership." Daniel clenched his jaw. "If my physical presence were the only factor, then we haven't built a very robust organization. I trust my team." Silence thickened as the board exchanged uneasy glances. Some agreed with Daniel's stance, others feared losing international deals. Finally, one of the oldest board members spoke gently. "Daniel, I remember when you were a young entrepreneur, unafraid to push boundaries. But we live in a competitive world. If these international investors see you as distracted, they might walk away." Daniel pressed his lips together. He recalled the heartbreak he'd caused by pursuing that competitive world at all costs. Now he refused to let his kids suffer the same fate of his absence. "I'm not distracted," he said quietly. "I'm dedicated, both to this company and to my family." In the end, the board decided to leave the choice to Daniel, but they made it clear that the consequences of skipping the overseas trip could be substantial. Daniel left the meeting with his mind buzzing. Outside in the hallway, he paused at a large window overlooking the city, feeling the old pull between ambition and personal life. Could he really balance both without sacrificing one? As he stared at the skyline, he recalled Dahlia's hopeful face, Liam's earnest request, and Cassandra's guarded yet blossoming trust. He thought of the years he'd already lost, ones he could never get back. And he remembered the vow he made to never again put them second. With a deep breath, Daniel called his assistant. "Prepare the necessary materials for our lead engineer to travel to Europe," he said. "I'll do remote sessions. I'm not going." Her voice crackled with surprise. "Sir, are you sure?" "Yes," he said, breath steady. "That's final." News of Daniel's choice spread through Stone Innovations swiftly. Some staff admired their CEO's commitment to family. Others fretted that this move risked the company's future. Investors sent curt messages, pushing to see if Daniel would relent. He ignored them, focusing on finalizing the product demo plan with his lead engineer, ensuring every question the overseas partners might have was meticulously addressed. Despite the internal storm, Daniel found solace in small daily interactions with Cassandra and the children. A quick text from Dahlia, "I'm practicing my ballet spin," would ease his tension, or a message from Liam, "Check out this new sensor circuit I designed," would remind him of what truly mattered. Cassandra, aware of his struggles, offered quiet words of support. "We appreciate what you're doing, but please don't let it tear you apart." Finally, the day of the overseas product demo arrived. Daniel was up at dawn, checking last-minute details. The lead engineer was already on site in Europe, sending him real-time updates. A video link was scheduled for the afternoon local time, which conveniently aligned with Dahlia's evening recital. Daniel would log in for his portion, then rush to the theater to see his daughter perform. It was a high-stakes juggling act. At the designated hour, he slipped into a private conference room at Stone Innovations, large screens showing live footage from a flashy convention hall overseas. Attendees bustled in suits, digital displays shimmering behind them. The lead engineer stepped on stage, launching into an eloquent presentation of the wearable tech's features. Daniel watched the feed intently, waiting for the moment he'd appear on screen. A few minutes in, the engineer gestured toward a large screen. "And now, we have a message from Daniel Stone, CEO of Stone Innovations." Daniel flicked on his camera and microphone. Instantly, his face appeared on the big display in that distant conference center. He greeted them confidently, highlighting the company's mission, the product's future impact, and the firm's unwavering dedication to innovation. But even as he delivered his polished remarks, Daniel felt no regret about not being physically in that room. His heart pounded not from fear of lost deals, but from anticipation of finishing in time to see Dahlia's big moment. When questions arose, he addressed them swiftly, praising the lead engineer's expertise. A murmur of approval ran through the foreign audience. Daniel could see from their expressions that they were still engaged, curious about the product, receptive to the demonstration. Once he concluded, handing the stage back to his team, he held his breath. Would they accept this remote participation as enough? The applause echoing through the video feed indicated a cautious success. The lead engineer gave him a thumbs up off camera, confirming that the demonstration had gone smoothly. Daniel muttered thanks, ended the link, and checked the time. Perfect. He had just enough margin to get to Dahlia's recital if traffic cooperated. 15 minutes later, Daniel was in his car, zipping toward the auditorium downtown. Dahlia had told him her group's performance was scheduled for the latter half of the program, but he didn't want to risk missing a second of it. During a red light, he glanced at his phone. Several texts from board members and investors praising the demo. A few hinted that they'd still preferred him in Europe, but overall the tone was positive. Relief washed over him. Outside the recital hall, parents and students milled about. Daniel slipped through the entrance, scanning rows of seats. Finally, he spotted Cassandra near the front, Liam by her side, leaving a seat open on her other side. She caught his eye, flashing a relieved smile as he scooted past spectators to sit down just as the lights dimmed. He exhaled a steadying breath, leaning toward Cassandra. "Made it," he whispered, a hint of pride and exhaustion in his voice. She nodded, her expression brimming with gratitude. "Thank you," she mouthed. Liam tapped Daniel's arm, eyes alight. "She's in the next dance after this one," the boy whispered excitedly. The stage lights illuminated a flurry of dancers in pastel costumes. The music soared. When Dahlia's group stepped on stage, Daniel felt his chest tighten with pride. She wore a lavender tutu, the new shoes he'd given her, and her hair in a neat bun. She glided into position with graceful determination. Then the music swelled, and the dance began. For the next 3 minutes, Daniel sat enthralled, absorbing every fluid turn, every poised extension. Dahlia looked radiant, her smile shining in the spotlight. The memory of board meetings and investor demands vanished, replaced by a fierce protective love for this small, determined dancer who was giving her all. When the performance ended, the applause thundered. Daniel rose to his feet, clapping harder than anyone else, heart pounding with awe. Dahlia took a brief bow, her gaze searching the audience until she found him. Her eyes lit up, and she waved just before exiting the stage. Cassandra reached over, squeezing Daniel's hand. Liam beamed. In that instant, Daniel understood, more clearly than ever. This was worth every clash with investors, every risk to his company's expansion. He had chosen to be here, to be present, and not even the entire business world could replicate this feeling of sheer, overwhelming pride and belonging. Later, backstage, Dahlia rushed into his arms, giggling breathlessly. "Was I good?" she asked, cheeks flushed with excitement. He hugged her tight, tears pricking at his eyes. "You were amazing," he managed, voice thick. Cassandra joined them, smiling warmly. Behind her, Liam hovered, also eager to congratulate his sister. Then, in a surge of sibling affection, he told Dahlia she'd nailed the final spin. As they left the auditorium, Daniel walked with his family, an arm loosely around Dahlia's shoulders while Liam and Cassandra trailed, chatting softly. The night air felt cool and refreshing. Daniel's phone buzzed with another text, likely more messages from Europe, but he ignored it. The only thing that mattered was the glow on his daughter's face, the quiet contentment in Cassandra's eyes, and the pride Liam displayed for his sister. Yes, the world outside might clamor for his undivided ambition, but here, under the moonlit sky, he chose something more precious, a sense of wholeness he'd once lost, now rekindled by every step they took as a family. A week after Dahlia's recital, life at Stone Innovations settled into an unexpected calm. The overseas product demo, led by Daniel's hand-picked team, had been a modest triumph, and the investors, though initially skeptical, saw strong media coverage praising the company's new wearable tech. Daniel's remote appearance had been enough to stave off any immediate crisis. Meanwhile, the children were thriving, Liam tinkering with his new robotics kit, and Dahlia still riding the high of her successful dance performance. Yet amidst the relative calm, Daniel sensed an undercurrent of changes about to take shape. The board of Stone Innovations had postponed a final vote on the next phase of global expansion, giving Daniel time to prove that his slightly altered priorities would not derail the company. Even so, pockets of tension lingered. He recognized that some decision-makers were waiting for him to slip, longing to see if fatherhood would hamper his leadership. It was a tightrope walk, but Daniel felt steadier than ever, fueled by a newfound clarity of purpose. One Thursday afternoon, while finishing a design review with his lead engineer, Daniel received a call from Cassandra. It was unusual for her to phone during work hours, so he excused himself and answered immediately, heart thumping. "Hi," she said, her voice carrying both excitement and nerves. "Is this a bad time?" "Never," he replied, quieting his surroundings. "Everything okay?" She hesitated a second before continuing. "I have news. Well, an invitation. I was offered a spot at a local art expo, a real booth to display my sculptures. It's part of a spring arts festival downtown. I wanted you to know, and also, I'd love if you could come." Daniel's chest swelled with pride. "Cassandra, that's amazing." He softened his tone. "Of course I'll be there if you want me to. Just tell me where and when." A faint laugh floated through the line. "I do. It's in 3 weeks at the Riverfront Pavilion. There's a booth fee, but I'm covering it with some savings. It feels big, you know?" He smiled, recalling how shy she once seemed about her art, how uncertain she was of its value. "You'll do great," he assured. "Let me know if there's anything I can help with." They talked a bit more, and Cassandra sounded genuinely excited. When the call ended, Daniel leaned against his desk, a slow grin spreading across his face. Cassandra's artistic world was blossoming, and she wanted him present. It felt like another step in the quiet but powerful evolution of their relationship. Those 3 weeks breezed by in a whirlwind of preparations for Cassandra's expo and Daniel's continuing efforts to balance Stone Innovations. While Cassandra polished her carved sculptures, wooden pieces that evoked themes of family, nature, and renewal, Daniel finalized a series of carefully planned expansions that didn't require him to travel indefinitely. He worked with the board, forging a more collaborative approach, so vital tasks wouldn't hinge solely on him. Dahlia and Liam helped their mom set up small display stands for her sculptures, excitedly labeling each one. Occasionally, they'd call Daniel via video chat, eager to show him the progress. He'd offer an encouraging thumbs up, feeling a surge of admiration for Cassandra's unwavering dedication. Behind the scenes, murmurs persisted about Daniel's lack of availability for certain potential business deals abroad. But day by day, the results spoke for themselves. Stone Innovations performed well, meeting all deadlines. The intangible side effect, Daniel's presence in the kids' lives, began to resonate within the company culture too. Employees appreciated a CEO who championed a balanced approach, seeing a reflection of their own desires to spend time with families. Finally, the day of the arts festival arrived. A bright Saturday morning found Daniel walking through the Riverfront Pavilion, searching for Cassandra's booth. The expo was lively. White tents sprawled across the promenade, filled with paintings, crafts, and sculptures of all kinds. Visitors wandered between rows of artwork, occasionally pausing to talk with the artists. He spotted her booth near a flowering cherry tree. Dahlia and Liam were already there, helping pass out small brochures that Cassandra had printed. Wooden sculptures, some large and swirling, others small and intricately detailed, decorated the booth's shelves. Each carried a distinctive style, graceful curves, natural grains, and an undercurrent of human emotion. Cassandra stood behind the main table, engaging a passer-by in soft-spoken conversation. Daniel approached quietly, letting his eyes roam over her display. He recognized one piece that looked reminiscent of the reunion sculpture she'd once shown at the gallery. This newer version had two adult figures, each with an outstretched arm, and two children in the center, carved with a flowing grace. The sign read, "Resilience." His heart twisted, thinking of the journey they'd been on. Then Dahlia spotted him and tugged Cassandra's sleeve. Cassandra looked up, her face lighting with relief. Liam bounded forward, all smiles. "Dad, you made it!" He knelt, returning Liam's grin. "I wouldn't miss it." Straightening, he met Cassandra's gaze, a mutual warmth passing between them. "How's it going?" he asked, voice gentle. Cassandra exhaled with a small, excited laugh. "Better than I expected. I've sold a few pieces. People seem to really connect with the themes." Daniel beamed. "That's wonderful. You deserve this." A flush of gratitude colored her cheeks. "Thank you for believing in me," she murmured. Then, mindful of the children, she switched to a lighter tone. "I'm so glad you're here." Dahlia and Liam ushered Daniel around the booth, proudly explaining the meaning behind each sculpture, even if they didn't always get the details right. Visitors wandered by, some recognizing Daniel Stone, the CEO of a high-tech empire. But the glances were less intrusive than Daniel had feared. He simply introduced himself as Cassandra's friend and father to these two enthusiastic art consultants. As midday arrived, the festival bustled with activity. A steady stream of admirers came to Cassandra's booth, praising her artistry, asking about her technique, and occasionally purchasing a piece. Daniel stepped aside to let her handle the transactions, but he found joy in watching how confidently she spoke of her art. Once an uncertain dream, her talent now shone openly. Among the crowd, Daniel noticed a group of his employees who had come to support the local arts. They waved happily, offering compliments to Cassandra. A few asked about stone innovations, but he deftly steered the conversation back to the festival. Today wasn't about corporate deals, it was about Cassandra's accomplishments and their children's proud faces as they watched her succeed. After a while, the kids grew restless and asked permission to explore the festival on their own. Cassandra nodded, reminding them to stay nearby. As Dahlia and Liam skipped off, Daniel slipped closer to her, lowering his voice. "This is incredible," he said, gesturing at the display. "You're amazing." She looked up, a mixture of fondness and disbelief flickering in her eyes. "I never imagined I'd actually be here selling my work like this," she admitted. Then, in a slightly trembling voice, she added, "A while back I used to dream about you showing up, seeing what I do, and now it's real." He gently placed a hand over hers. "I'm sorry it took me so long, but I'm here now, and I want to keep being here." She hesitated, scanning the crowd to ensure the children were still within sight. Then her gaze locked on Daniel's. "I believe you," she whispered. Her tone held a quiet certainty that hadn't been there before. They might have lingered in that moment, letting old wounds and new hopes merge. But a customer approached, asking about a particular piece. Cassandra shifted smoothly into artist mode, explaining its inspiration. Daniel stepped aside, letting her shine. The conversation ended with the customer purchasing the sculpture. Cassandra handed over the wrapped piece with a grateful smile, turning to Daniel once again. As afternoon became evening, the festival lights came on, casting a warm glow beneath the canopies. Musicians set up at a makeshift stage, their melodies drifting through the gentle breeze. Liam and Dahlia returned, brandishing small crafts they'd bought, a bright bracelet for Dahlia, a keychain shaped like a robot for Liam. Cassandra's booth had sold several more pieces, enough to make her both pleased and a bit stunned by the success. Finally, the festival began winding down. As Cassandra started packing up, Daniel offered to help load the unsold sculptures into her car. Liam carried smaller items, Dahlia clutching bubble wrap. Cassandra tallied her day's earnings, expression a mix of disbelief and joy. "I did better than I ever thought," she admitted, voice tight with emotion. "This could really help me expand." A moment later, they were finished. Cassandra locked the car trunk, turning to Daniel, Dahlia, and Liam. The children were still buzzing from the day's excitement. Cassandra's eyes shone under the soft streetlights as she said, "Thank you for everything. I couldn't have done this without your support." Daniel gently brushed a strand of hair behind her ear. He glanced at the kids, who watched with open curiosity. "I'm proud of you," he said, voice thick, "and we're all here for you." Dahlia, sensing the emotion, slipped between them, hugging Cassandra's waist. "Mom, you were awesome," she declared, giggling. Liam joined in, hugging Daniel's side. The four formed a small circle of contentment on the busy sidewalk. Passers-by offered fleeting smiles at the family scene, but no one intruded. In that pocket of downtown, with the festival lights glimmering and the last notes of music fading, they created their own sphere of belonging. Cassandra looked at Daniel. The children pressed between them, and he felt the profound sense that they were no longer separated by the shadows of the past. In the weeks that followed, they would still face challenges. Stone Innovations Board would require Daniel to navigate expansions carefully. Cassandra would learn how to balance a growing art career with parenting, and the children would continue to adapt to having both parents present. But for now, under the glow of city lanterns, they reveled in the simple victory of being together, forging a future neither Daniel nor Cassandra had dared hope for just months ago. As they slowly walked back to their cars, hand in hand with the children, Daniel caught Cassandra's eye, a silent promise passing between them. This time, they would do it right, side by side, one step at a time, turning the page on old regrets and writing a new story of love and family, stronger and more resilient than ever. If you enjoyed this story, don't miss the next one. Just click on the screen.